Coming to you live from deep within an icy, radioactive wasteland, we are the survivors of the social justice zombie apocalypse. The few, the brave, the bitchy, once more wading into battle against the zombie herds with Rantzerker 53. Karen titled this something and I forget it. What was it? Laci Green Rapey Rape Edition.
Rapity rape.
Rapity rape. Okay,
rapey
yeah.
rape. Not rapey rape. Rapey rape is completely different. Rapity rape is much more fun.
Rapity rape. All right. Okay, well, since we're trying something a bit different today, we're going to be doing the Rantzerker, and then we'll do an intermission, a very, very brief intermission, and then we will start the radio show on the same topic, which is, of course, false rape accusations. And I would like to state, just for the record, that Laci Green raped me of my innocence. And of course, this being YouTube, and I just said that allegation on YouTube, you have to, of course, believe me. And Laci Green has to do the mental gymnastics to make that true. That she did indeed rape me. Parentheses of my innocence.
Laci Green raped me of my common sense and my dignity.
Brian.
Yes.
Did Laci Green rape you?
Yes, Laci Green totally petted me in all the wrong ways.
That fucking disgusting, horrible.
Sexual predator?
And she's going to have to prove that she did not, somehow.
Oh, yeah, no, of course, because that's the way things should be.
Exactly. Guilty before proven innocent. It's the foundation of justice in our society.
Oh yeah, no. Any justice system is going to believe the victim, right? So, so here we go.
Otherwise, it isn't justice. All right, I've got her up. That's the horrible person who raped me of my innocence.
And me of my common sense and dignity.
I need my safe space. Just looking at her reminds me.
And she pet Brian in inappropriate places with inappropriate amount of force.
She unleashed the red torpedo on his nose.
Oh, God. All right, Brian, can you select me so that we can get the full screen effect? Have you selected me, Brian?
You have been selected.
Okay. Now, just as per the usual, if there's any problems, please indicate to one of us, and we will make sure that your oxygen masks fall down from their compartment.
Please ensure that you help anyone, you put your own mask on before you help others that require assistance.
Yes. And in the event that of a sudden loss of, I guess, cabin lighting, the exit rows will be clearly indicated via these LED strips on the bottom of the aisle. If you are seated in an emergency exit, please do open the door, as it were, so that everyone can get out.
Yeah.
And away.
Or stand in front of there and, like, say, essentially, yeah, no, I just don't feel like opening the door.
Or alternatively, just shove people back into the burning wreckage. We're all gonna die, fuckers! Fate ordains it! Alright, let's just
Alison recently had to fly in an airplane. Can you tell?
Yeah. Okay.
Hey, Internet, question.
Is that loud enough? Or do you need it louder?
No, I think that's fine.
Have you ever worried that someone was lying about rape every single time a woman comes forward about...
Okay, so the first thing that she says is, are you ever worried that someone is lying about rape? Are you worried, Laci?
Well, like I said, I'm worried about that every time a feminist opens her mouth, because she's going to be lying about rape in the context of it as a societal problem. So she's going to be lying about rates of underreporting. She's going to be lying about the context in which that happens. She's going to be lying about false reports of rape. She's going to be lying about prevalence of rape. She's going to be lying about pretty much everything, the reasons, the causes behind rape. She's going to be lying about pretty much everything having to do with rape, right? Like, for instance, okay, David Butt, that butthead lawyer, former prosecutor, I believe, or maybe he's still a prosecutor, who wants to essentially construct a separate parallel system of restorative justice for rape and sexual assault victims in Canada, in which there would be a different burden of proof and a different set of evidentiary rules and blah, 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 right? All in favor of essentially convicting men of this crime, this particular kind of crime. He essentially said, well, the reason that we need that is because the victims of this crime are underserved, right? They're underserved by the law as it stands now because report rates are so low. Only, 30% of victims of sexual assault ever report that to the police that they were sexually assaulted. And okay, so let's take this in context. Only about 30% of victims of all types of crime, including simple assault, aggravated assault, theft, robbery, muggings, all of that, right? Only about 30% of all victims of crimes bother to report those crimes to the police. Your garden hose goes missing from your yard, you're probably not going to report it to police. My kid's bike got stolen. Guess what? I didn't report it to police. My car got broken into and rifled through 10 or 11 times before I reported it to police. And I only did that because, like the 11th fucking time they dumped my ashtray out on the floor of my car looking for half-smoked cigarettes, right? So essentially, almost all types of crimes, other than homicide and like murder and car theft, right? Automobile theft, is grossly underreported. 70% or so of those crimes are not reported to police, right? And the only reason murder is almost always reported is because, you have this problem of a dead body lying here. And car theft, you have the problem of registration and insurance issues, right? Every car is registered and insured, therefore you have to report that it's been stolen, right? So essentially, these are the only two crimes that have very, very high report rates, almost 100%. All the other ones are hovering around the exact same freaking rate of reporting as sexual assault, in terms of how prevalent it is and what percentage of victims report it to the police. And then on top of that, you have a conviction rate, cases brought to trial that result in conviction, of 55% for murder and about 45% for rape in Canada. Not that big a fucking difference, particularly since in case of murder, you actually have a dead body. You have a dead body that did not die of natural causes and can be determined to have not died of natural causes. You may have a murder weapon. You have DNA evidence. You have all kinds of stuff. You have a definite crime that's been committed. With rape, the 80% of rapes that occur within a dating or acquaintance context, you first have to prove that a crime was even committed. And then you have to tie the perpetrator to that crime, right? When it comes to being stabbed to death, pretty much everyone agrees and assumes that there was a crime committed there, that the person who got stabbed to death didn't consent to that.
Wait. You mean what you're saying is that there isn't a lot of consensual stabbings, whereas there are a lot of situations where exactly the same act is consensual. But with rape, you have to determine whether or not exactly the same act was consensual or not.
Yeah,
with
and that's
it's pretty easy to tell.
That's based entirely on state of mind now, right? So essentially, what you have, you've had feminists who have essentially they've eliminated the requirement to prove that you resisted by showing that you were physically injured. They've eliminated the requirement to provide corroborative witnesses, right? They've eliminated all of these requirements. So they've essentially boiled a rape case, any given rape case that occurs within a dating or acquaintance context, right? Or a relationship context. So 80% of all rapes right, that happen in private between people who know each other, people who often trust each other, people who are often in a relationship with each other, and people who you would assume, okay, in this situation, would it be reasonable to assume that people would agree to have sex? Well, yes, not like the woman who's jumped by a frickin' douchebag with a knife on a jogging path at 5 o'clock in the morning. Nobody would ever assume a woman would reasonably consent to sex under those circumstances. But, you know, second date, oh my goodness, they had sex. Well, how reasonable is it to believe that she would consent to sex under those circumstances? It becomes a completely different question. And at that point, because they've eliminated every other fucking thing, they've eliminated the requirement to prove resistance, they've eliminated the requirement for corroborative witnesses, they've eliminated all of these things that would make it easy for a woman to prove that, you know, in the case that she actually did resist and was beaten or something like that, right, that she had actually been raped. They've removed all of those requirements, and now it's just all down to state of mind in a private situation with no fucking witnesses, and in a situation in which it would not be unreasonable to assume that a woman would agree to have sex with a man. So how the fuck is there a 45% conviction rate?
Well,
How
yeah, I mean,
is it that with this situation, in 80% of cases, it's almost as easy to convict a man of rape as it is to convict him of murder when there's a fucking dead body, multiple stab wounds, and they found the freaking bloody knife under his mattress?
yeah. Well, I mean, because if you think about it, sex, it's really hard to distinguish. When you're dealing with a dead body, there's very little consensual murder that goes on. So you know, like you were saying, you know, almost guaranteed a crime was committed. But the problem with rape is distinguishing it, the minor amount of sex that occurs without consent versus the great deal, the far vastly greater amount of sex that occurs with consent, because that vastly dwarfs. So there's no consensual non-criminal activity that is comparable to murder and vastly dwarfs the murder rate. Because there just isn't. Because there's no consensual stabbing going on. Very little of it. So it's like, you gotta understand. I mean, if you look at it in that context, it's a 45% conviction rate is incredible.
Yeah,
Because
no,
you're like you were saying, you're first trying to determine a crime exists by distinguishing between two activities who show exactly the same signs, and the only difference is a state of mind, versus another activity where there is no consensual correlation between being stabbed and some sort of consensual other activity. There isn't. Maybe suicide, but that a suicide is pretty obvious in and of itself. So.
and assisted suicide too. I mean, like normally with assisted suicide, you know, like if somebody helps somebody commit suicide because that person committing suicide wanted to do that, there's usually some kind of documentation that the person who wants to die is not going to leave the person who helped them vulnerable to prosecution. They're not going to do that. I mean, this person, you know, if you really want to die, you can't handle it on your own, you can't do the work of that on your own, you're going to be essentially making it very, very clear, right, in writing or whatever, or a video, that you wanted to die and that this person helped you with your consent, right? But, you know, dying is something that happens once in a lifetime, right? And choosing to die is something that doesn't happen in most people's lifetimes, right? Choosing to have sex happens multiple times a week for a lot of people, sometimes multiple times a day, choosing to have consensual sex, right? And when the evidence of consensual sex is indistinguishable from the evidence of forced sex or non-consensual sex, and the only thing that distinguishes one from the other is a person's state of mind, yeah, no, I'm completely amazed. And what really fucking bugs me about this argument that, oh, rape is so underreported, right? And they'll take it completely out of context of all those other crimes that are just as underreported, right? But then they will essentially say that it's because of right? It's because of the stigma. It's because of the shame. It's because fear of being not believed. It's because of fear of being re-victimized and re-traumatized and all of this other shit. No, when you actually ask people who say on those surveys that Mary Caste does and other feminists do, you know, and have been deemed to be sexual assault victims who have not reported their sexual assaults, when you actually ask them, why didn't you report it, right? Between 70 and 90% of them say it wasn't that big a deal. It just wasn't worth the bother. It was a garden hose going missing from my front yard. Do I really want to spend 3 hours of my afternoon on this? Or do I just want to, like, move on with my life, buy another hose and water my lawn?
You know, I think when I was listening to you describe that, it occurred to me. Well, first of all, I just want to point out that we get a 45% conviction rate, and you're basically asking the judicial system to find a single dropper of red dye in an ocean of consensual sex. And yet they still manage to get a conviction 45% of the time. I would be thinking that just based on my logic, just thinking about it, how difficult that is, I would expect the conviction rate far lower. So we're probably looking at a situation where there is a lot of false convictions.
Oh no,
and
we know from the Innocence Project, right? And
there's a ton of false convictions going on.
About half of the exonerations that they've secured through DNA evidence have been just men falsely convicted or wrongfully convicted of raping women, and that this does not include the only number of false convictions that's higher is for homicide, false convictions, exonerations in general, right? That didn't necessarily use DNA evidence, but exonerations in general that are secured. The highest number is for murder, but I'm willing to bet that there's a disproportionate number of those murders that had a sexual element or involved a crime, a homicide of a woman or a girl, right, with a sexual element. Because you look at two of the most famous, three.
All right, well, but Karen, before we get into that,
in Canada, Guy Paul Moran, David Milgaard, and Stephen Truscott were all wrongfully convicted of murder in the case of the rape and murder of women.
All right. But having said that, we are like 40 minutes in and we're only 3 seconds in. At this rate, we're going to be doing this until tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon at this time. So the final thing that I wanted to say is it's amazing we get that conviction rate as it is, considering that we're trying to decide or trying to sort through an ocean worth to find a single dropper worth of red ink. That's unbelievable. And as the Innocence Project shows, there's an incredible rate of false positives in that situation. And you know what? Let's just get into it, because I could go on and on and on, and we can't. But let's do the next 20 seconds.
Every single time a woman comes forward about having been abused by a beloved movie star, musician, TV star, YouTubers, that star's fans immediately accuse her of lying. There are men's groups online that claim that women lie about rape 90% of the time.
No, first of all, there are no men's groups who claim that.
No, there are some men's rights activists who cite certain research that has determined that 90% of reports made to police have turned out to be false, right?
And I think there's something else. Ooh, Karen, echo.
Okay.
She might actually be talking about the fact that we say in those statistics you find that 2 to 8% are definitively false, and then you have the amount that are end up being convicted, which is about 10%. In between the definite convictions, which still have false convictions, and the definitely false accusations is about 90%. Like if you take away the definite convictions, you get about 90%, where 2 to 8% you know it's definitely a false accusation, and the rest you don't know what it is. So maybe that's where she's getting it from as well.
No, I actually think that she's citing certain people. I mean, even Angry Harry has came out and said essentially, But you have to look at all of the statistics in context, right? If only 10% of rapes are reported and the false report rate is 50%, right? That means essentially, if you break down the numbers, that means essentially that a given woman is as likely to lie about rape as she is to be a victim of rape. So a woman is about as likely to lie about rape as, or no, she's actually, if the false report rate is 90%, she's as likely to lie about rape as she is to actually be a genuine victim, right? Because 90% of rapes are not reported according to some feminist statistics. So if you go into, if the false report rate is 50%, a man is still 10 times more likely to rape than a woman is to lie to police about being raped, right? I don't think that this is some kind of, oh my goodness, we're just not giving women the benefit of the doubt. Literally, to believe that the report rate for rape is about 10% and the false reporting rate is 50%, you still have to believe that men are 10 times more likely to rape a woman than a woman is to lie about having been raped, right? So you're still assuming that men are 10 times more likely to engage in horrible, antisocial, damaging, harmful behavior than women are, even if the false report rate is 50%. If you buy the feminist gobbledygook of only 10% of rapes ever get reported to police, right? Because there's that 90% of women who never report, who got raped, were genuinely raped, and don't report.
I wanted to say something about that because you were sort of implying that maybe it's in even when you look at the studies, a lot of them just didn't consider it worthy of their time to deal with. I mean, I know from experience that when I talk to men about like blue pill men about the men's issues and men's vulnerabilities in society, one of the things that they reach for is rape, and I wonder if this David Butt is actually quite disturbed by the idea that there are a lot of women who just shake off rape or sexual assault, and they're just like, you know what? I mean, they're probably of sterner stuff than myself, but give them their due. They're just like, yeah, fuck it. This is not even worth it. I'm moving on with my life.
Well, when you think about how they define sexual assault, though, I mean, because like when they talk about rape, right, as this sort of category of crime, what they're really talking about is sexual assault of all kinds. So some of it's just like having your ass grabbed at the nightclub, right, and then you slap the guy across the face, and then it's done, right? He assaulted you, you assaulted him back, he backed off, then it's done, you move on with your life, right? It's it's a very small percentage of those cases. I mean, even the Gian Gomeshi stuff. He didn't even have sex with any of those women.
Yeah. Okay. Next 20 seconds.
Sheriff in Idaho very recently claimed that they don't need a better system for rape kits which collect evidence because most victims are liars.
The majority of our rapes that are called in are actual consensual sex.
And I mean, look.
That's also, she's misportraying what he said. He didn't say they were lying. He said that the majority of women who report that they were raped, it turns out that it was consensual sex. That doesn't mean that they were lying about what happened to them. It just means that it means that
it wasn't a crime under the statutes.
That's right.
Okay, so, and first of all, why are you saying, that's a false allegation there, Laci. You can't just say that he's lying. What's your evidence? Let's find out.
Couldn't you or me or anybody in the world just make up a rape for attention to get revenge out of jealousy, as Toby Turner's mom posted on Facebook? Yeah, you could totally do that. But would you do that? And how often does that actually happen? The FBI states that between 2 and 8% of rape reports...
Oh my God.
Laci, it happens a lot. And that 2 to 8%, again, leaves about 80% in the middle. Between 2 to 8, we know for sure it's a false rape accusation, and 10% conviction for pretty sure that it was actually a rape, minus the false conviction, which we don't know, but probably is pretty high as well, judging from what the Innocence Project is doing. In between those two, let's say it's about 80%, is a gray area that nobody knows what's going on. Is it a rape?
Dark number.
Is it a, is it, is it, it's the dark number. Okay,
Well,
so.
what gets me too is that this actual study that she's citing here doesn't actually say 2 to 8%. The last numbers that the FBI actually released, which were long before 2013, as far as the unfounded report rate, the false and unfounded report rate, was not 2 to 8%. It was 8%. It was 7.9% or something like that, which is 4 times higher than the false report rate of any other index crime that they track, right? And they have not released any numbers since then. This report here does not actually, as far as I know, and I've skimmed through it, it does not actually provide the information she claims it's providing.
Okay, so this is the second. One allegation of a lie and then a misrepresentation of data. You're doing well, Laci. Very well. Okay, next 20 seconds.
Are false, which is actually a low number in the crime world. Other crimes, like, say, theft, they hover around 10%.
No. It's not a low number in the crime world. The only number I think that could actually exceed, false theft. No. False theft reports are not about 10%. False auto theft reports, right? Because your cars are insured. That's why there is a 100% report rate, right? Is because when your car is stolen, you get money back. You get a new car, right? So there's an incentive.
So she's lying by omission. This isn't false theft. It's false auto theft. And that's the one, I assume that's the one category of crime. Because when I looked, almost every category of crime was at 2% or less. So this would be misleading.
Yeah, most other index crimes are 2%. There are some there are some crimes, particularly theft, auto theft, theft of jewelry, things like that, that because you insure them and can profit from saying that they've been stolen, then there's an incentive there to falsely report. But that's why insurance companies are extremely rigorous in investigating, proving that you actually owned what you owned and proving that it's actually no longer in your possession and was actually stolen before they'll pay you.
Oh, I wonder if we're going to get like false theft shaming from feminists. Those insurance companies going in and questioning the victims. Naughty. All right.
False reports. And even that 2 to 8% statistic is deceptive. It includes reports where someone accidentally identified the wrong person, reports that are thrown out because...
Does it?
Yes, misidentification is included in the false/unfounded report rate, but it does not include what she's about to say next.
Of inconsistent details, but it is a well-known fact amongst victimologists that trauma affects your memory, and that
the false unfounded report rate includes things like the Crystal Gail Mangum. She accused these 3 Duke lacrosse players, and one of them had video footage of him at an ATM and a receipt, right, of him being at an ATM across town at the time that he was supposedly gang raping this woman, right? Oh, yeah, no, that was just a recollection error, right? Yeah, no.
Yeah, you can sort of slide in there. If you're a false accuser, you can really get in the recollection errors there. But regardless, 2 to 8% are misidentified perpetrator or recollection error or outright false report, and then you have another 80 in which you don't know what happened at all.
It's not even 2 to 8%. It is 8%. It is 8%. The FBI has never provided a 2% anything.
That's like
it's 8%.
That 2% thing comes from Susan Brown-Miller, right? Yeah. So basically, Laci's starting from the Susan Brown-Miller 2% number, which is complete fabrication bullshit, because it only came from one source and she was the source, and no one challenged it and no one thought it was weird, or and nobody ever redid the math on it or went and looked at her stuff. They just took it as gospel. And then the 8%, which is the the actual data.
The FBI
and she's
number.
basically saying it's somewhere in there. It's
Yeah, no,
somewhere
Susan
between
Brownmiller.
Susan Brownmiller's truth.
What
and
a
this
surprise! She would say that false reports are only 2% since she was a lynching apologist.
Well, in reality, it's minimum. Like 8% is the lower bound. The FBI is quite good about determining, like being sure whether they determine a report to be false and or unfounded, right? So yes, it is. There are cases of misidentified perpetrators, that are included in that, but those are also wrongfully accused men, right? And yeah, no, the FBI tracks actual incidences of injustice, not incidents and of the wrong person being accused, right? Or a person being accused for no good reason, right? That's what they're tracking. They're not tracking, oh, maybe, oh yeah, she just didn't quite, get the details consistent or whatever. No, that's not what the 8% number is.
That 2 to 8% includes survivors who recanted. Someone could take it back because they were lying, sure, but much more commonly, they take it back because they're being pressured to.
You don't know that. You don't know that, you fucking bitch.
Take it back, or because they've decided they'd rather just not deal with it. So what does this mean? It means that malicious, actually false reports and allegations are pretty rare, and yeah.
You don't know.
You don't know that either. Ugh.
No, we don't really know the real number because it's a false accusation. How many times do people get falsely accused and they go to prison because they fail to defend themselves or because the courts are against them? How many times does a person get falsely accused and even if they are found innocent, they get lynched or beat up or just abused outside by the court of public opinion?
David Leasack.
Does it even matter that this is rare?
Or not? But David Leasack found that 5.6% of rape reports were demonstrably, provably, absolutely 100% to a reasonable doubt standard, 100% false. Okay, this is a feminist researcher. Researching prevalence of rape, prevalence of rapists, the patterns of rapists, and false reporting. Right? He found 5.6%. Now, that seems low, right? It seems reasonable, right? Except when you actually get into his methodology. And his methodology was that a case had to be proven false to a criminal court standard, to a beyond a reasonable doubt standard. But his methodology also included training for the police officers, the investigators who at the departments, the agencies that were participating in his study, right? The training materials essentially said, if her accounts are inconsistent, don't follow up. Never ask her the same question twice because she might give you two different answers, right? And if she does give you two different answers, don't follow up, right? And all kinds of stuff. Essentially, it followed the listen and believe, don't dig too deep, and if you find inconsistencies, do not investigate in the other direction to see if the report is false, because it's just not really worth it, right, to determine whether a report is. So essentially, this 5.6% rate of false reporting involves cases like someone like Sonar Yasa in Edmonton, who was a cab driver. He told a bunch of women who were out clubbing that they couldn't smoke in his cab. They got out of his taxi, refused to pay the fare. When he called police, they started accusing him of having sexually assaulted them to the crowd that was gathering. They called all of their friends, right? And so there's all these drunk people in a crowd gathering. He called police for his own safety, right? When the responding officer arrived, these women reported that he'd sexually assaulted them, and he immediately took his dashboard cam, right, and played the footage of the entire cab ride for the police officer. Okay, now even that case would not be considered a false accusation of sexual assault because it was never referred to an investigator, right? It was immediately weeded out. There was no formal report filed, right? He was accused of rape to police, but there was no formal report filed. It was never referred to a dedicated sex assault investigator, so it would not be included in that 5.6%. But it would actually take something like that, a situation like that, where evidence of absolute 100% to a reasonable doubt falsity of the claim lands in investigators' laps, just falls out of the fucking sky, right? Without them looking for it, with them actively avoiding looking for it, okay? In order for it to be determined false. Now, if you can find a rate of 5.6% of reports that are demonstrably false to a criminal court standard, given those criteria...
Given also the criteria they're not actively looking for evidence that they're false, it has to fall in their lap.
Yeah. Like, I'm amazed that they found that many.
So in other words, in this survey, where they were actively trying not to find false rape accusations, they were basically in a situation where the evidence just fell in their lap, fell from the sky, they just accidentally came upon it, just by accident, because they were deliberately looking, and if there was any inconsistency, they would just sort of shuffle her off to the side and be like, okay, this is we're not going to continue this. You know, you can disappear. They see the videotape in which, yeah, he raped me, and on the videotape, I don't know what, she's actually, like, he's pushing her off while she's trying to mount him or some shit. That they see stuff like that, that wouldn't be considered a false rape accusation. They would just stop pursuing it. But in the cases where it was undeniable and the evidence was basically piled on top of them and they couldn't look around it because it was so insurmountable, they would classify it as a false rape accusation. And even in that case, they found 5.6%. You're right, Karen, that is freaking amazing. That is like, that is mind-boggling. All right, let us continue.
Someone calling them a liar when they come forward is extremely common.
No, it's not. It is not common to call someone a liar when they come forward. It is common for people to reserve judgment.
Yeah. And
to say, we don't know, innocent before proven guilty. Is that what you're turning innocent a fundamental part of our justice system, innocent until proven guilty, into calling the accuser a liar?
Yeah.
That's...
Yeah.
Many of the reasons why we're inclined to doubt someone revolve around rape myths, myths about victims, and myths about gender. For one, most perpetrators aren't greasy, creepy guys who hang out in the shadows. They're just regular people in our lives. When fans, friends, family, coworkers find out that someone that they know and love did something terrible, it can be really hard to grapple with and accept. And it's...
I just have to banana that sucker. So it can be really hard to grapple with and accept the idea that somebody, why don't you just support both parties until something is determined in a criminal court?
Yeah.
What the hell's wrong with that? You are automatically going with a presumption of guilt on everybody's part.
Yeah, no, except for not on the woman's part, right? Because falsely reporting a felony is a crime in itself, and so she's assuming that men are guilty and women are innocent, and that if we don't believe women when they say they've been raped, and we don't, and we do believe men when they say they haven't been, right? That somehow this is like, I don't know what, sexist, or when men say they haven't raped anyone. Like, I'm sorry, right? If you want it to be as easy to convict a man of rape as it is to convict somebody of shoplifting, right? You're going to have to do some work to remove the stigma from that crime, because the whole reason we require the standard of evidence that we require, and they've done studies on this. The more serious the crime, the more serious the penalty, the higher the burden of proof that a judge or a jury will require before they subject that person to the stigma and the punishment that goes along with it, right? Look at death penalty cases. People have to be super fucking 100% absolutely sure that the guy did the crime before they're going to sentence him to the fucking electric chair, right? They need a higher level of surety, right, than if he was just going to get 20 years in prison, right? If he's going to die as a result of their decision. Now, if you want the conviction rate to go up, right, you're going to have to leave off this whole fucking rape is worse than death, rape is worse than murder, rape is worse than fucking anything, rape is such a horrible, horrible thing. No, if it's something that everybody does, like you just said, anybody would do it. It's just regular people, regular folks, rape. Yeah, we all do it, right? Okay, treat it like that. It's just some fucking, it's like taking a handful of grapes at the produce section at the grocery store.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay,
that's it.
Instead, they choose to deny it. That halo effect around a perpetrator can be so strong that you can have cases like Cosby's where nearly 60 women come forward and report, and people still don't believe that anything happened. Sometimes the perpetrator even goes so far.
I know, it's so amazing. It's so amazing how many women came forward and accused their neighbors of witchcraft in Salem. And I'm almost positive that the false report rate of witchcraft in 1691 was, really super low, only 2%, right? And then all these women came forward. They must have been telling the truth.
Yeah. No such thing as a feeding frenzy in this world, apparently. All right.
Or as to say, I didn't do it. They're lying. This affirms people who don't want to believe that the sexual assault happened.
You got how many viewers? And you're telling people that he's lying if he says he didn't do it? How much sway do you have over your channel? Like, seriously.
Is that really what she's saying? Could you go back a little bit? I want to hear that sentence again.
Didn't do it. They're lying. Still don't believe that anything happened. Sometimes the perpetrator even goes so far as to say, I didn't do it. They're lying. This affirms people who don't want to believe that the sexual assault happened. There are a lot of people...
Oh my God. So if a person is pleading innocence, they must be lying.
No, and they're also re-victimizing the victim. No, you saw this with Cosby, right? With Cosby, one of the women that accused him, right, he came out publicly and said, I didn't fucking rape her, and she sued him for libel because he was essentially calling her a liar, and he countersued and won.
God.
In the States who believe that in order for a rape to be real, you have to have reported it. And in order for that report to be true, a court must convict them as guilty. Now, in reality, about 68% of victims of sexual crimes don't report, and only 2...
Okay, how about this, Laci? I don't have a fucking clue if a rape occurred or a false rape occurred or some sort of misunderstanding or anything. I would rather trust a jury that gets information on the case and the decision that they make than the court of public opinion. That's as simple as that. I'm going to reserve judgment. If you have a family member or a friend who is raped or is subject to a potential false allegation of rape or alleged rape or whatever, support them through the process. But everybody else, why should we have to weigh on one side or another?
Yeah.
What the fuck is your problem?
No, I mean, okay, you must have read To Kill a Mockingbird, right? Because I didn't, right?
Yes, I read To Kill a Mockingbird. But remember, when we do it to white men and black men, it's progressive.
Yeah, I know. Didn't that end with him being acquitted, but getting lynched?
I fucking don't even remember. It was so long ago.
Or there was plenty of evidence. Maybe he got convicted, but there was plenty of evidence showing that he hadn't actually done it. But I just know that it didn't end well for the defendant in that case, and that he didn't do it. He was obviously falsely accused, and it was obvious to everybody in the courtroom. If they ended up, I don't know, the chat can maybe tell me. If they convicted him, it was because they felt like they had to, because he was a black guy. And if they acquitted him, he ended up getting freaking strung from a tree branch. But
well,
I mean,
it's progressive, right? Because now we can create the same sort of system that got so many black men killed in prior to the 1960s. But white men can join them too.
Yeah,
that's
no, that's
progressive. That's awesome. This is the logic of lynching.
We're eliminating racism, Alison.
Oh, yes, by treating both black and white men equally. This is the logic of lynching, right, Laci? This is the logic of lynching. The decision that someone is guilty in such a stigmatized crime. That's exactly, like, everything you're saying is right out of the fucking playbook of the KKK during Jim Crow. Oh! Society is biased for black men who are accused of rape. The justice system is biased for black men who are accused of rape. They were saying that. They're saying exactly what you were saying. So the only difference is you're saying it towards black men, of course, but also white men and Asian men. And you're somehow saying it's progressive because now we include all men. Jesus!
It's intersectionality, Alison. With the program.
2% of rapists ever see a day in jail. Does that mean that 98% of people are just lying?
That is also a lie. Oh my fucking god, that is also a bald-faced lie. Okay, because there have been studies. Lisak's study that has been widely discredited by conservatives or dismissed by conservatives, despite the fact that it really shouldn't be. Because it dovetails with other research, and just because it's not representative of a specific university does not mean that it's not like rapists, right, as a population of people who behave a certain way, suddenly, like, if they're attending a certain university, they're going to be completely different in their psychopathology, right, from rapists elsewhere in society. Now, there's plenty of evidence that shows that the majority of rapes are committed by recidivists who have anywhere between 5 and 11 rapes under their belts before they ever actually get convicted. Now, and they get convicted of one rape, and they have anywhere from 5 to 11 undetected rapes that they haven't served time for, right, under their belts by the time they're serving time for a rape, right? So, it's not 3% of rapists spend time in prison. It is something along the lines of 30% of rapists, minimum, spend time in prison, right? 30% minimum, because even it's essentially only 3% of rape reports result in the man serving jail time, right? But or the rapist serving jail time for that particular rape, right? That's not the same thing as saying only 3% of rapists spend time in prison. It's like the way
you can't compare the total number of rapes. You can't say that each rape is done by one rapist, or like so that it's a 1-to-1, one rape, one rapist. It's more like 10 rapes are done for every one convicted rapist. So if you look at the numbers of just the numbers of women who are reporting rape, you don't get a sense of how many rapists are going free, because most of those rapes are being accounted for by a very small number of male rapists.
Yeah, and if the report rate for rape is 30%, and about 30% of men eventually spend time in prison for their crimes, right, of rapists, right? Oh my goodness. You know what you should be doing, Laci? You should be encouraging women to report when they've actually been seriously
incidentally, if you're a woman or a college-age student who's listening to this, female or male, and someone does this, like physically forces you to have sex or takes advantage of your You should
Alvin?
report that. Oh, sorry. I apologize. I just had a massive mechanical fail. But what I was saying is that anybody who is listening, who's in college, young man, young woman, and you encounter someone who physically forces you to have sex, and I'm including, you're passed out drunk and you are unable to resist, even at that state of drunk where you're too physically incapable to resist, you report them. And don't listen to feminists. If you report it, and it's an honest-to-God rape, and you go through the whole process, you have a very, very good likelihood of putting someone into jail. And that particular person, like Karen was saying, has probably victimized many other people before you and will continue to victimize many other people after you. So what you need to do is report them. But only do it if it was a physical, like it's not a situation where he or she was like, I'm not gonna be your friend if you don't blah blah. Not that shit. If it was if you're physically forced, report it, and you have a good chance that you're taking somebody out, one of these goddamn rape tards, out of business.
Yep.
All right, and do not listen to feminists when it comes to this shit. They don't know their ass from their elbow.
Yeah, no, if I believed feminists, right? And I thought, oh, I've been horribly raped, but there's only a 3% chance that I'll get justice, and I'm going to be re-victimized and not believed, and I'm going to put through like some sort of horrible, grueling process where people are really insensitive and treat me like shit, right? If I believed that, I wouldn't report, right?
Yeah, just be prepared that.
What are you trying to do, feminists? What the fuck are you trying to do when you tell women that if they're raped, this is what they're going to be facing?
No, I mean, there are women now who've been saying that they were raped and they didn't report because of this shit. Because of the shit being spewed out of this woman's mouth. So feminists collectively are responsible for more rapes. Fucking unbelievable. But if you are listening, report it. And just be prepared that you're going to be going through a process where they don't know the truth. So you will be questioned. But don't take it personally.
No, and here's the thing.
You have some support while you go through it. Somebody who will believe you.
Here's the thing too, right? And I tried to explain this to someone from, I think it was Global News, when the Don't Be That Girl posters were kicking up all kinds of media attention, right? I was trying to explain to her, now, if I was a rape victim and I knew, right, and I knew that a significant proportion of reports to police of rape were false, right? If I knew that, right, then I would see the process of testing the veracity of my claim as a necessary evil, nothing personal, right? Because there are women who claim that they're victims who are not, who are actually, and so this is just a necessary part of the process. It's not that they don't believe me, right? It's not that they're just intentionally trying to make things difficult for me. It's not that they're trying to discourage me, right? And I know my claim is true, right? And so I'm going to stick it out because I know that they're not going to catch me in a lie, and they're not doing it for some arbitrary, fucked up reason because they hate women, right? And they don't want to help rape victims, right? So if I knew that the false report rate was, 20% or 25% or 15% or like 40% or whatever, right? And I was having to go through a process of having my claim be vetted by investigators, I would be able to put that process in perspective, right, in terms of, well, some women lie about it, right? But if I actually honestly believe that women almost never falsely report this, right, what excuse do police have to put me through this process of testing the veracity of my claim, testing my evidence, all of this stuff? It can only be because they hate women or they don't want to help me as a victim of rape. It can only be because of misogyny and rape apology and all of this other horrible stuff. It can only be because they want, for some arbitrary fucking reason, to re-victimize me and put me through some kind of grueling, unnecessary process. Well, why would they do that if they know that 98% of the time the woman is telling the truth, right? So you're looking at, if you actually convince victims that that women almost never lie about this, right? And then they encounter a system that exists to vet their claims, right, and weed out false reports, right? And unfounded reports and misidentifications and all kinds of other things, right? And and reports that are, okay, well, you didn't lie about what happened to you, but it wasn't actually a crime, and all of those things, right? You're put through that process. There's no reason, right, that you can think of if women never lie about rape, right? There's no reason that you can think of as to why the police are subjecting you to this, right? And so you automatically think that they're against you, right? Whereas if you understand that there are some women, a significant portion of women, whether it's 5% or 10% or 20% or 40%, right, of reports, right, that are false, then you can put that into context and you can say, well, I'm not lying, right, and I think it's worth going through this process, right, in order to get justice, right? Because it's not that the police have anything against me. It's not that they're trying to discourage me. It's not that they're trying to fuck with me, right? They're just doing what's necessary to sort the wheat from the chaff, right?
I just wonder what the fucking agenda is here. Because all they seem to be doing is making it more difficult for victims to find justice and prevent these rape tards from racking up more notches on their bedposts. This is what feminists are doing with this nonsense. And to what end? Yes, women lie about it. Yes, there has to be a system in place to make sure that a man in question is not, there is a likelihood that he did indeed rape the alleged victim. There has to be. And to think that there should be any other way is to believe something incredibly false about women, which is that they don't lie, that they don't lie for jealousy or for revenge or for whatever reason. And they do. And what you're doing is you're creating a way of discouraging victims from coming forward. For what end? What is your fucking agenda? Like, why would you want to destroy people?
And what drives me crazy, too, is that, I mean, like, when you actually look at false accusers, Crystal Mangum, she was a career criminal, essentially. I mean, like, she falsely accused those guys at Duke of rape in order to avoid being committed to a mental institution for 3 days of observation and involuntary commitment again, right? Because she had been in there before. So, I mean, like, this is not your normal average woman, okay? You look at someone like that woman who made 11 false reports of rape in order to get out of taking her frickin' bar exams in the UK, right? You look at, there was one woman in the UK who made something like 26 false reports of rape, right? She was mentally ill, right? She made 26 fucking false reports of rape, right? So you don't necessarily need, right, like 40% false reports, right? Does not mean that 40% of women lie about rape, right? It could be, as rape is, right, a very tiny percentage of women, right? A very small percentage of women who have personality disorders, who have psychoses and neuroses, who have, who maybe have extreme motivations in the moment, like that one woman who was caught by her husband fucking her boyfriend in the pickup truck. He came home early from being deployed in the military and caught them in the act, and she looked through the open truck cab door at him and said, "He's raping me," and so her husband shot him, right, and killed him, because apparently, you know, that was her first impulse, was to say, "He's raping me," right, and she was convicted. He was exonerated of that murder, and she was convicted. I forget where in the States this happened, right? But, you know, like, you look at certain types of personalities, it does not mean that all women lie. Even if you say 90% of rape reports are false, this does not mean 90% of women lie about rape. It may even only mean that there are 4% of women who have serious fucking mental issues who repeatedly lie about rape.
Yep. And furthermore, once again, your agenda. What the fuck is your agenda? Why are you telling women not to report rape, basically? By saying that, the system is not just stacked, it's not just a system that's attempting to determine truth. It is literally hostile to women. You are saying the system is hostile to women. That's what you're saying. You are apparently encouraging women not to report, and when they do report, to be more traumatized by the system. You're encouraging women to experience more fucking trauma. Because I can tell you, if I were in an experience and I understood that if I was going through this experience and I understood that the courts were basically a neutral party trying to determine guilt, if I were going through that experience and I knew that, I understood that, it would be a hell of a lot easier to go through that experience understanding that than thinking the whole fucking court system was arrayed against me as a victim, which is what you're doing. You are actually causing women more fear, more trauma. You're encouraging them to let rapists go. Therefore, you are encouraging more rape. And to what end? What end? You psychotic Cthulhu beast! I have no fucking clue. That just deteriorated. I don't know what to call her.
It's just an ad hominem.
I know, but it's like, why would you do this thing that you are doing? Why?
It would be really bad if it wasn't so appropriate, though. I mean, the only thing I can figure is that Laci seems to be more important in defending women as a group from the possibility that they have the capacity to be bad people at times. She seems more interested in doing that than actually seeing justice done.
Or helping individual women who are going through this.
Yes.
Or preventing rape. Or encouraging women to report rape. I'm sorry, that is the most fucked up reason to do this. To actively hurt women and victims of rape. And encourage more victims of rape. That is so fucked up, just to protect the overall reputation of women? Like we're not human beings? Like, seriously.
That our courts aren't arbiters of truth, and they're not always adequately equipped to handle sexual crimes. Then there are myths about how a real victim...
arbiters of truth? No, that's what our courts are supposed to be. They're supposed to be there to say, here is what we know beyond a reasonable doubt is true. Right? They are set up to be arbiters of truth.
Yeah. I don't know what the hell planet you're from, but look at, usually Laci doesn't pull smiles or looks like this. I mean, usually she seems very earnest, but now I'm suddenly not feeling she's very earnest at all.
Yeah, well.
That's a bit of the smugness bleeding through.
Yeah, the smug dupingness. Like, yeah, I don't really believe this shit. Like, and then she's probably lying about this right next to that face. Bubble person inside.
He doesn't seem that sad. Well, a lot of people who go through a sexual assault are not as affected by it as feminists would like them to be. A lot of women, that they're not as damaged by it as feminists would really like them to be. I know I wasn't, and I was discouraged by feminists from sharing my story because I would make other victims feel bad because they were unable to move on with their lives with the ease that I apparently did, and so therefore I should not share my story, not talk about it publicly because, me talking about my situation would re-victimize women who were not as strong as me or some shit. I don't fucking know.
When I'm listening to you say that, I'm remembering, and I will not remember any of their names because I'm terrible with names. There's a guy who was, or a prisoner of war who was in the Hanoi Hilton for 7 years, enduring unbelievable levels of torture and most likely rape too, but that's his own business. And when he says his story, and he basically walked out of that because of his constitution, because of the way he approached the trial that he had, And because he also took it upon himself to make sure that the men he was with, he tried to help them get through it. Because of all that, he walked out of it and basically walked back into his life and got on with his life. 7 years of torture, and he walked back into his life and got on with his life. Most people find that an inspiration. You know, you look at that and you say, hey, maybe I'm not so bad. But apparently, feminists don't want female rape victims to be inspired to get over, well, what a surprise, eh? The pain of rape is very profitable.
Yeah, no, they don't want
to cultivate those sores.
They don't want to. They don't want anybody to be able to get past it because of the way that they can sort of exploit the trauma and exploit the sort of permanent nature of trauma if they can convince people that it's permanent, that you'll never be the same, you'll never have your innocence back, blah blah blah. You know, no, some of us have a specific type of constitution where you know, and it's not like my sexual assault is the only hardship I've been through, the only danger I've been through, the only thing that I've been through that has been life-threatening, and it wasn't life-threatening, but I have been through life-threatening situations, and you know, I just, for some reason, I'm not really that affected by them, and so, okay, but why should I have to pretend?
Yeah. And also, why can't we say that guy who walked out of the Hanoi Hilton after a 7-year stay and walked back into his life, why can't we say, wow, that's something that we could aspire to with our rather petty problems and traumas? You know, maybe we should hold ourselves up to that standard. No, we should just wallow in our pain and suffering. And believe me, that is a face that I totally trust. Look at that face. Don't you trust it, Karen?
I know. She reminds me of that initial accuser of Gian Gomeshi, right? The one who wrote an article on Exojane. A Dose of Buckley did a Scumbags of the Internet video about her. But her name was Carla something. And she didn't use Gomeshi's name, but she described things in enough detail that, you know, everybody knew it was Gomeshi. And she literally, and it harkened back to Naomi Wolf's experience of sexual violence, which was essentially she had a older professor really admired, and then he invited her over to his apartment for a quiet dinner, and I guess he thought it was a date, and she didn't, and he got the wrong idea, and he put his hand on her thigh, and she actually vomited. And this other woman, Carla, wrote this whole big long blog post on Exojane, right? Essentially saying she thought Gomeshi was gay. She thought he could be her important gay friend with connections in Toronto, and she could exploit the relationship. And so she went on to a concert with him, and he put his hand on her ass and looked at her with sex eyes, and, you know, months later, right, and this is all that happened, right, and months later she was walking down the street and someone was wearing the same cologne he had been wearing that night, and she had to vomit into a trash can on the sidewalk, right?
Oh, for fuck's... Can we not weed these women out of the gene pool? Like, seriously.
He grabbed your ass, whatever. Fuck, he thought it was a date. You were trying to use him for personal gain.
Yeah, can we just, like, you're not tough enough to survive on a world that isn't padded. Okay, let's move on.
Would act. In reality, there's no one response to sexual assault. Different people handle it in lots of different ways. Another myth when it comes to men is the belief that men can't actually be raped. Men want sex all the time. He had an erection. He was into it. But an erection is not consent. And increased blood flow can be a fight or flight response. Lastly, one of the sneakiest, and I think...
Okay, we'll give her that.
She threw us a bone. She threw us a bone.
By not throwing us a bone.
Props for that. Props.
Good on you, Laci.
I think that's a way of her saying, see, I care about guys too. Now let me get back to demonizing them. But thanks for acknowledging that, Laci.
Hello? Have I cut out?
No, you're right here.
You're here, but we need to move on. Banana.
Yes.
The most pervasive reasons why people don't believe survivors is that most survivors are women. There are many
Oh, you
See?
fucking lying cunt.
Told
No,
you.
half of survivors are men. Half of fucking survivors are men, and they are not believed. They are high-fived. Oh my goodness. Most survivors aren't believed. You just said in the previous sentence that most people think having an erection means a man consented, and therefore, when he says he was raped, when he says he was not willing, when he says he did not consent, he is not believed. You literally just fucking said that!
Yes, Laci, you literally just said that not being believed is basically a trait of men. In other words, not being believed is based on the physiology of men. You get an erection, sex occurred, and that you must have consented. In other words, there's no way, there's no situation where men escape not being believed. And then you turn around and say that if men were the primary victims of sexual assault, which they are, by the way, they would be believed. How do you fit so much fuck in your brain? How can you immediately contradict yourself within 2 sentences? Men aren't believed because they're men, but if all rape victims were men, or most rape victims were men, they would be believed.
The reason that rape victims aren't believed is that most of them are women.
Yeah, except that implicitly all male rape victims aren't believed because they're men.
I just literally, did you hear that? I just literally slapped myself in the face.
I think my brains have fucking exploded. Thank you, Laci. Thank you.
That's what Cthulhu does. Drives you
Yes.
I'm having a fucking aneurysm.
My God. She just elicited some sort of like metaphysical brown note. Just
I don't
splattering.
Men get raped as often as women, and they're also less likely to be believed. But women are still the majority.
No, it's even worse than that, Brian.
Rape victims are not believed is because the majority of them are women. That's why.
But this right after she said men are not believed because they have penises. So there are very few, like this. I'm sorry, trans men, but you're a minority of men. Most men have penises. Therefore, the vast majority of men will not be believed when they are raped because they are men. Okay? She just said that. And then she turns around and says that most rape victims aren't believed because they're women.
Yeah.
She managed to fit 2 completely fucking contradictory concepts into one apparent paragraph.
Yeah.
Like she might have... Do you get that, Brian?
Yes.
It's not even, you don't even have to bring in other statistics to say, yeah, men are actually quite a number of rape victims. If you include prison rape, they are the majority of rape victims. But we don't have to bring in those statistics because she just contradicted herself within 2 sentences. Men aren't believed because they're men, but if most rape victims were men, they'd be believed.
Is she going to mention that women can also rape other women? And
probably
that also
not.
Happens?
Probably not.
Probably not.
Probably not.
Conscious sexist beliefs that we learn all throughout our lives that come in and inform our opinions. That women lie a lot, we're not trustworthy, we're manipulative, you know.
I don't know, Laci. You're not fucking convincing me here. You know, you're not convincing me that the stereotypes that women lie a lot, they're not trustworthy, they're manipulative. You're not convincing me that those stereotypes are false.
Well, she's not convincing me that she's capable of following a single line of logic. But no, she is manipulative.
This entire fucking video has been lying, manipulating, being untrustworthy. She's not even a reliable internal narrator in her own fucking narrative. She says completely contradictory things to herself on a regular fucking basis within seconds of each other. How am I supposed to trust you, Laci?
You're not deserving of trust, but however, I would like to point out that you mean that women are human. Human beings lie and manipulate. The fact that women are capable of lying and manipulating doesn't say anything. What is your solution, to say that only men are capable of lying and manipulating, but women are incapable of it? And
Well,
once you acknowledge that women are capable of lying and manipulating, your entire construct and house of cards comes tumbling down. Because then we have to have a judicial system that accounts for the possibility of women being liars and manipulators.
When he says he's innocent, right, he's obviously lying, right? And he's re-victimizing his victim.
Bitches be crazy. When those attitudes and biases within ourselves go unchecked, they absolutely do real damage. But wait, what if it really is actually truly, really, truly false? False reports are illegal, and they're typically taken pretty seriously when they surface.
No, they are not, you stupid, stupid bitch. Crystal Gail Mangum served no fucking time for falsely accusing 3 men at Duke University of gang raping her. She served no time. She got mandatory counseling and community service. Oh my goodness, taking that very, very seriously. And oh my goodness, then she committed arson, right, and endangered the welfare of a child because she set fucking her boyfriend's clothes on fire in a bathtub in an apartment where there were children present, okay? And then she went on to stab her boyfriend to death. And that was when the system decided to take her actions seriously. A man died before the system was willing to actually take her behavior seriously.
If we took false accusations seriously, we could actually be able to report on women in jail who have been accused of false accusations, that there would be a significant proportion or population of them. There isn't, so we don't. The end.
Like the UK is starting. The UK is just starting now to aggressively prosecute women who make absolutely blatant, malicious, provable false accusations, like that woman who made 11 different false accusations of rape to get out of having to write her bar exams, right? Okay. 11 fucking false accusations, right, before she gets prosecuted. And then she serves 2 years. Well, what would a man serve if, what would the man she accused serve if she'd managed to get him convicted? Well, what sentence would he have served?
That would be taking false accusations seriously. 11 false accusations, and only now is she serving time for them. And this is repeated over and over again.
Years for 11 false accusations. Now, what if that man had committed 11 rapes? How much time would he serve?
Yeah. No, they aren't taken seriously, Laci. They are not taken seriously.
Really important to talk about them, because ultimately in this fight we're fighting for justice for everyone, so we need to pay attention in the rare moments that this happens.
You don't know that they're rare.
You just don't know, Laci. Nobody can know.
To better understand them, and we do a whole lot of talking about false reports, which is why we also need to talk about the reality that sexual assault accounts are nearly always true.
No.
Oh, no,
they're not. They may be. Maybe sexual assault accounts are nearly always true. That may be the case, but we cannot know. We cannot know whether sexual assault accounts are nearly always true or nearly always false or somewhere in the middle. We cannot know, Laci.
That's a certain case. The current state of knowledge does not support your conclusion.
Until we all have installed in our brains, recording our every state of mind during our every activity, we have no way of knowing what proportion of rape and sexual assault reports are true or false, genuine and sincere, or maliciously made because somebody wanted revenge or somebody felt dissed or somebody didn't get what they wanted the next morning.
Can't know.
Readily believe someone who says they've been robbed than they've been raped.
Because robbery has evidence that isn't consistent with the consensual activity. And where it does, things like fraud, people don't necessarily believe.
Yeah, and things like fraud, victims often get blamed.
And also, things like fraud and robbery and assault, you don't have all of this hysteria around them that's requiring people to make a decision about them. Like most robberies, most assaults, they don't go into the public eye, and people aren't drawing conclusion on fucking Reddit forums. It's just not, because it's just not a stigmatized crime. They just happen much more privately. But if you're going to throw this shit out into the public, people are going to have opinions. And those opinions are perfectly legal and legitimate.
Men are far more likely to be sexually assaulted than to be falsely accused.
And they're
This is true.
they're also much less likely to be believed than women are. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, I mean, she's right with this, which is interesting because that's something that I've said, but different. Men are actually far more likely to be raped than rapists, too. Not just falsely accused, but men are more likely to be raped, and
Than
probably
than
they are to rape, Laci. And they're also, yeah, you're right, they're probably more likely to be raped than falsely accused. But they're also more likely to be raped than rape. So
well, and on top of that too, right? Okay, like we have to actually look at it in terms of who is committing the wrongdoing in a given situation. When somebody is raped, there's a rapist. That rapist is a criminal. Everybody believes that they're a criminal if you can prove that you were raped, right? Everybody believes that that person is a criminal. Everybody condemns what they did, right? And therefore, and it's one person holding you down and fucking you against your will. When you are falsely accused of rape, right, you have one person, right, who's getting the entire weight of the system to hold you down so they can fuck you against your will, right? You literally have a system that has been legitimated by the consensus of the general public, right? The entire weight of that system is on you. It is not one perpetrator. It is an entire system that is the perpetrator and is aiding and abetting the perpetrator, the primary perpetrator of that false accusation, right? And it's not about being held down for 20 minutes or an hour or whatever against your will, and then you get to, pick up the fucking shambles of your life. No, you are facing a years-long fight in some cases just to keep yourself out of prison, for, I don't know, anywhere from like 2 to 15 or 20 years, right? So at which point you're going to be raped and you're going to be fucked over by the system. And so it is an entirely different fucking crime with entirely different consequences, right? Your autonomy as a person, as a rape victim, has been removed for a period of time of 20 minutes or an hour or a day or whatever, right? Unless you're Fritzl's daughter, in which case it was decades, right? But that's an extreme case, right? The normal rape victim, it's just like, it's one incident, and then it's done, it's over, and you have your life back to put back together, right? No, when you have falsely accused somebody of rape and the system decides that they agree with you that that person belongs in prison, right? Your life is gone. It's gone for the foreseeable future, right? And it's not just that one person victimizing you, it's the entire fucking system.
Yep. And it just occurs to me, well, maybe I'll save this insight for the end, and banana this.
Far more common that a survivor is convinced to back down by the public, friends, family, even the police when something.
That survivor. I've never actually heard a woman say that they didn't report because of they didn't report because the feminists told them that there would be all this disbelief and didn't warn them about the system as it is. It's not.
Isn't this based on one incident with one cop one time who was talking to these, and this is where all the slut walks come from and stuff too,
Yeah,
right?
he said don't wear
Right.
slutty clothes if you don't want to get attention.
Yeah, and that was it. One incident, one time, one person, and well-intentioned. He was trying to help, and that actually spurned all of this hysteria and all of this craziness, and essentially it is blown so way out of proportion that there are people like Laci Green that are literally trying to tell women that they should not be able to depend on the justice system to essentially exercise their due process to help find justice for real victims.
Well, and what gets me too about that particular case of that one police officer in Toronto is that he prefaced his statements with, "I'm not supposed to say this," right? And the feminists turned around and claimed that this proved, the fact that he said this, said what he said, proved that there was an institutional systemic bias against sexual assault survivors, sexual assault victims within Toronto's police service, even though he came right out and said, "I'm saying something I should not be saying. I'm not supposed to be saying this," right? So essentially, he was speaking for himself and against the policies and the procedures and the biases within Toronto police services. So he was actually he was going rogue, right? He openly stated that systemically and institutionally, right, the system and the institution disagrees with him. He's not supposed to say this.
Who is this woman? Who is Laci talking to? This is the face of lynch culture. Disbelief deters justice.
Yeah,
she could be some woman in the South in 1960 saying this about black men. Disbelief deters justice.
Yep.
Who are you talking to? Why is it that the population needs to believe that a particular alleged rapist is guilty? Why do they need to do that? Why do they need to do that? Why does the police need to believe that they're guilty? What is the ultimate end of having all of these people believe that they're guilty, if not a lynch mob? And a complete disruption of actual justice.
Yeah.
And you know what's really pissing me off? I'm going to get to what really pisses me off about this, but I'm going to banana this because I want to get through it.
Well, all men are guilty, basically.
Did happen. We need to talk about how widespread myths and disbelief protect.
Oh! Disbelief protects abusers, just like the KKK. Said disbelief and justice in the criminal justice system protected those fucking niggers raping white women. And I'm saying that with anger at the entire concept of this shit, that this is resurfacing again. Because guess what, Laci Green? You know the group of men who's most likely to be believed guilty? The group of men who is most likely to be believed guilty of a sexual crime. Do you want to guess what group of men that's going to be? Do you want to guess, you self-entitled white woman, as you march another generation of black men into a lynching culture? Because guess what? It still affects white men, but the hammer goes down harder on black men. And you are the fucking standard bearer of this shit, of bringing us back, regressing us back. Disbelief protects abusers. This is the same fucking logic as the KKK. I'm sorry, did I blow out everyone's eardrums?
No, it's fine. This video has been viewed 500,000 times.
Great!
And she has 1,500,000 subscribers. Fortunately, well, actually, it's kind of fucked up. But fortunately, there are more dislikes than likes on this video. 21,440 dislikes, but 20,020 likes. The fact that it's split that close to the middle is actually quite disturbing to me.
Actually, no, I find it hopeful when you consider her audience, and this is one of the things that really bothers me about Laci Green, is that her audience consists of it's sort of the same demographic as Onision and other similar YouTubers. That it's essentially
millennial progressive types, or at least millennials. No,
it's a lot of girls who are still in middle school and high school, right? They're they have no experience of the world. They have no perspective. They have no ability to put things in to an adult context. And she's essentially telling them things that like, and she's doing it in such a way. And she, like, if you look at, how she splices the videos and, and it's so quick between one idea and another, so you never have time to think about it. You don't have time as a 14-year-old girl to notice the contradiction, that she contradicted herself within 2 sentences. A 14-year-old girl isn't necessarily going to pick up on that. All of this stuff is just going to feel really good listening to. And so this is what bothers me about people like Laci Green, is that they target a very, very young audience. And the fact that the downvote bar is so, is 50% essentially, is actually, it gives me some encouragement. It makes me feel a little bit better about things.
Okay, and what would make me feel really good is if this is over.
Abusers and allow them to keep on abusing others. If false reports are something that worries you, know that statistically you're on the side of reason and justice and truth to believe someone who comes forward. We need to be willing.
Why does anyone need to believe someone who comes forward? To what end? I mean, we can maintain a neutral attitude towards the outcome. The public does not need to believe guilt, unless you have a particular aim in mind for the public to believe guilt. Because otherwise, why would you care? These are just the opinions of the public. You are saying that the public needs to presume guilt. To what end? To what end?
The only thing that ultimately matters is what the courts decide and what the process decides. The public opinion court is irrelevant. I don't see what she's trying to do other than create an environment where, despite the fact that we have a legal system and police and courts and lawyers to go through the motions that are professionals and they've trained for years and years dealing with all this stuff, despite all of that, we have to form, in her mind, a public mob mentality around these incidents. And it has to be, in her mind, that we side with the female victim in every case. Male victims too, but it doesn't happen with them as much. So mainly female victims. We gotta side with them, and we gotta agree with them. We gotta believe them, regardless as to what the courts do. And if the courts find the guy innocent, then that's proof of corruption. That's proof that he got out, and he wasn't supposed to. So what is that? Where could that train of logic ultimately lead, other than mob justice?
Well, it leads to what David Butt wants, which is a parallel court system wherein the burden of proof is lowered.
It's on men. The burden of proof is on men.
Yeah, and the burden of proof is lowered. Presumption of innocence is reversed. Yeah.
So essentially, what he wants is a lynch system. So two sets of two legal systems, one for women and what they consider gender-neutral crimes like theft and fraud, and one for men and what they consider male crimes like rape, and I assume domestic violence and other things like that. Basically a system of justice for men that is essentially a lynching factory.
We actually already have that. We actually already have two.
But they want to enshrine it into law.
No, it is already enshrined in law.
We're staring down the barrel of this. I mean, this isn't good enough. That we already have two justice systems based on the fact that men get different sentences.
Well, and based on the fact that due process protections and admissibility of evidence and all kinds of other things, all kinds of accommodations are made toward victims. For rape and for any crime that's definitionally considered to be a patriarchal crime, any crime that's definitionally considered to be a masculine crime against femininity, right? So, and in Spain they even have a designation of crime called femicide, and it's any man who kills any woman for whatever reason. The punishment is actually more severe than any other. There's an available punishment that's more severe than available for any other.
Essentially, what we're looking at is an apartheid. A legal
Oh, no,
apartheid.
we're looking at it essentially. I mean, like in Nazi Germany, one of the things that one of the legal innovations that came about in so the lead up to the final solution was that it became okay. It became entrenched in law that an Aryan could anonymously accuse a Jew of a crime, of a felony. And so essentially, dog, go be a Jewish old man somewhere else. Go hack up your lungs somewhere else. But essentially, you had a system where Aryans could anonymously accuse Jews of crimes, right? And there would be a ban on publication of their names, right? Ban on publication of the Aryan's name. And you had a system where a crime against an Aryan was considered more serious than a crime committed by an Aryan against a Jew. It had different punishments. You had all kinds of accommodations within the legal system in order to make it easier to convict Jews of crimes against Aryans and more difficult to convict Aryans of crimes against Jews, right? And so literally what you had is what Laci wants.
This guy Butt.
Yeah, and this guy David Butt, but not in terms of Aryans and Jews, but in terms of men and women. And some of this has been actually sort of legislated in places like Spain with the femicide laws. In Spain as well, if a woman accuses her husband of domestic violence, it's essentially go to jail, do not pass go, do not collect $200. You're in there, no due process, no notice, no nothing, and like it's when I remember Gordon, what was his name? Gordon
Ramsay?
No, Gordon Smith. A Voice for Men took his case, right? He said that when he was accused, his ex-wife accused him multiple times of all kinds of different things, domestic violence, sexual assault, all kinds of different things, right? And he said that he thought he was living in the U.S., sort of the land of the free, the land of due process, the land of constitutional protections of individuals and stuff like that. He said that the moment that his ex-wife levied these accusations, it was like waking up in Pyongyang.
Well, yeah, because right? we're staring down the barrel.
He had no due process. He had she takes out a restraining order. The first you hear about it is when you arrive home from work and the police are there to remove you from your home. They give you 5 minutes. You're not allowed to collect your necessary documents. You pack a suitcase. You get the fuck out, right? And then maybe at some point in the next 3 months you'll have a hearing and be able to say, oh, actually, like I've never laid a finger on her. Maybe if you're lucky.
Okay.
So, yeah.
You gotta do the echo. What's amazing to me is we are staring down the barrel of what that lawyer Butt is proposing, which is a complete legal apartheid between men and women. And like you were saying, it's already in the works. They've already laid the groundwork with the changes in due process with rape accusations and other so-called patriarchal crimes. But this is just gonna. It's like there is no end to this. The end to this is literally, as Butt was proposing, a completely different legal system for women accusing men of shit.
Yeah, no, and where the accusation is the conviction.
Yeah, where the accusation is the conviction. This is what we're looking at. This is what we're staring down the barrel of the gun, and it's already started. And I know, okay, let's finish this, because we gotta, I don't know if you've given the link to the others, Brian, but you probably should do that.
I will. One more thing I want to say real quick. Earlier in the video, Laci Green was talking about celebrities that use their status, I don't know, or they use their, their status as a way to attract people. And then she flashes a picture of Bill Cosby as one of her examples. And despite the fact that Bill Cosby still hasn't been found guilty of actually raping anyone, and the only thing that he's actually confessed to is taking drugs with women, the large consensus of people who I speak to, who I know, and I'm sure that you may also have friends too, and those of you who are watching, all of my friends and people who I know, they are convinced, they're positive that he's not only guilty, but it's actually been discovered, like for whatever reason. There's been a confession or there has been a conviction of some kind, and for whatever reason, he's used his status to get out of actually going to prison. And that is the degree to which this is actually impacting our people's, the public zeitgeist about this kind of thing. If there is enough hit pieces and articles that warp the facts, they leave things out, or they just, they don't directly make a declaration of truth on something, but instead they allude, they assume. There are people who give opinions. They say, I think he did it. I think that and this is Bill Cosby totally did it, and what do you think? And here's all the reasons why I believe it. And then everyone else that reads it says, yeah, I think he did it too. But there has been absolutely, to my knowledge, nothing has been put, pen to paper that said, yes, he's been found guilty. All we know is, oh, look at all these women that came forward. It must be true based on that. Oh, he admitted to doing drugs with women. It must be true based on that. Here's a whole bunch of memes I saw. It must be true based on that. Here's what the Young Turks had to say, and so on. None of it actually means anything. Well, the only thing that ultimately matters is what the court decides. And when I run into people who bring that up, I say, they say, well, I think he did it. What you think doesn't matter. I mean, you can think it if you want to, but it's not the truth. The only thing that matters is what did the courts find out. Even if he did, what the courts find out is what the courts find out. Considering how long it's been since that happened, I think that that's actually kind of beyond the, we're past looking at it now. But
we actually know that one of the accusers who came out made a false accusation because she claimed that he raped her at a particular event at the Playboy Mansion, so on a particular date at a particular place, and not only was he not present there, he was in fucking New York City or something like that at that time and could prove it, but she was not there, and nobody who was attending that event, it was like the Midsummer Night's Dream event or something like that, 10 years prior, nobody who was actually present at that event recalled her being there. She was not on the guest list. There was no documentation, no evidence that she was there at all, or that and there was evidence that he was not there, right? So we already know, right, that one of the Cosby accusers was absolutely bald-faced lying.
Right, and that's the thing. If you hadn't have brought that to my attention, most people don't know that. They're still going. In fact, they're done. Most people have stopped looking at the case, and they just have their belief, and most people believe he did it, and they're not even questioning it anymore. And the Gian Gomeshi thing, there will probably be people, because of if you just look at the quantity of articles that will try to paint him in a bad light or say that he was guilty despite evidence to the contrary, despite the fact that he was acquitted or whatever. They're just going to say, nah, but we still think he did it, and here's why. And if there's enough of that, it just, this is I think what Laci is doing. She's doing the same thing. She's doing this whole, the facts don't really matter. What matters is your feelings on it. What would you like to believe, and let's make that true.
No, she's not even doing that. She's just saying women's right. The end, which is laying the groundwork. All of this talk.
Yeah, it's like the Sith. Look into your heart, and you will find that women are right.
Well, it's just plain bald face. Listen and believe. Women don't lie. This is laying the groundwork for even more of a legal apartheid between men and women. And I'm not surprised that Butts is actually advocating for a completely different legal system for when women accuse men of crimes. And he'll probably get it. I mean, this is what's so disheartening about all of this. Is that
I don't think he'll get it because our Charter of Rights and Freedoms is, I mean, it's not very robust, but it's robust enough to defend against, I don't think a parallel.
For how long?
I don't think a parallel court system would survive a constitutional challenge. I don't think it would.
For how long? I mean, because the thing is that they've eroded due process. and then we have the differentials in sentencing, and then we have this yes means yes. I mean, basically, it's going to happen, but it's going to happen not as an overt thing, but just as a unwritten policy, or even a written policy.
Or
but
scope creep.
Yeah, it's going to happen through scope creep, because it never goes backwards. I remember 7 years ago on the Spearhead, we were arguing about how the justice system, because of this erosion of due process in rape cases, and this was before this was like just before the Dear Colleague letter, we were arguing how the justice system is actually and verifiably discriminates against people, mostly men, accused of rape crimes, because they've changed due process for crimes, sexual crimes. Why they can justify that, I don't know, but they changed due process for those crimes. So, right off the bat, written in black and white, men are discriminated against when they're charged with rape in terms of their due process rights. And we were talking about this and how the police are biased against men who are going through this situation of being charged with rape. And then the Dear Colleague letter came in. And we went from looking at the police process and identifying how it discriminated against men to actually saying, please God, take these accusations and give them to the police. Do you remember that? And that stuck with me for 7 years. Yeah. That changeover. We went from at one point saying, the police need to make some changes to improve the situation for men. Innocence Project proves that. The black and white due process changes prove that. And we went from that to saying, oh my God, please give these accusations to the police to handle.
Yeah, and the criminal system.
It got worse. The Dear Colleague letter made it worse, and every single step is making it worse and worse and worse.
But there is some pushback, that guy in Georgia, right? He's the head of the Education Appropriations Committee. He essentially told the presidents of the universities in his state that if you're not committed to protecting the due process rights of students accused of crimes, right? Don't talk to me about your budgets, gentlemen, right? Because you're not getting any money from me, right? He came right out and said the Dear Colleague letter has no force of law. It did not have to go through the Administration Act, the Administration frickin' whatever Act. It's not legislation. It's an edict. It's a fiat from on high, right? Made by an appointed bureaucrat who has no authority to actually dictate anything, right? I don't know why universities are so terrified of it, because it really has no force of law. All the Dear Colleague letter needs is for one brave university to launch a constitutional challenge, make a federal case out of it, and say, we're not going to do it, right? We're not going to comply. This is unconstitutional. And, well, I guess if Scalia was still on the frickin' Supreme Court, there would be a decision in terms of, no, you're right, it's not constitutional. It doesn't have the force of law. It's just one person's opinion who happened to be appointed to, Ruslan Ali, to be appointed to the position that she enjoys in a bureaucracy. She wasn't an elected official. None of what she said had to go through any kind of scrutiny or process or vote, right? She just said it, and somehow that made it true, right? And these institutions, right, and lawmakers need to realize that it has no force of law. It wasn't voted on like legislation is. It didn't have to go through a vetting process. It didn't have to be debated in any legislature, right? It didn't have to pass 2 houses. It was one woman writing a fucking letter. That's all.
And then we're looking at the dear, not just the Dear Colleague stuff, but the enthusiastic consent stuff coming through California now. I mean,
that's already failed a constitutional challenge. Yes means yes has already failed a constitutional challenge, right? Maybe not in one of the states that it's actually it's actually been legislated, but yes means yes has already been challenged in a court of law and found to violate constitutional rights.
Yeah, but not in a state where it's actually present, right?
Yeah, no, you just need somebody to actually launch a constitutional challenge.
Okay, well let's finish the last 22 seconds.
Willing to face the truth, to approach justice honestly, even when the
Oh my fucking god. Approach justice honestly. Why does rape need its own laws? Like, why does rape need its own procedure on due process? Why?
perpetrator is someone that we know and love. So to April Fletcher and any survivor who finds the strength to come forward on YouTube or beyond, I believe you. And one day I hope that the world does too.
Well, I have to tell you now, folks.
Fuck you, Laci.
Well, no. She fucked me anyway, and I said no.
Laci
know.
Green raped me.
Alison.
It was horrible. She touched my thigh, and then it was just so gruesome. It was like all these slugs crawling up my skin, and I couldn't help it. And I lurched away from her, and I turned away, and I was just so, like, nausea just rolled over me like a Chinook over the desert. And then I managed to just lurch to the sink, and I was sick. I was so sick. And I threw up all these carrots, and it was horrible. Horrible!
She touched me in my bad place, i.e. my dignity.
Yes, she touched me.
And, without my consent.
There just happened to be a sink behind me.
Listen and believe.
She twisted out.
Listen and believe, Laci.
She twisted out my my lipstick.
She
too.
Twisted. Oh God, that's awful. So, all right.
She harnessed your red torpedo doge?
Oh,
Yes.
no, it's awful. Oh, you guys are mocking me. You don't believe me. You don't believe me that I was.
No, we're trying to share our stories.
Oh.
We're sharing our stories because our stories are important.
And they should be believed.
They should be believed.
Absolutely.
Okay, now this is. I'm done looking at Laci Green.
It's done.
We're done.
Get rid of it.
Oh, the others are in here already. Okay, let's do a bit of an intermission.
Yeah,
Karen, are you ready?
We should take a short intermission.
The Cries of the Carrots, Anna? You read that too? That was ages ago.
What is it? What's his name? That Tool singer guy? There's a song that talked about Cries of the Carrots.
Maynard?
Yeah.
Maynard.
You know, when you're harvesting them and you're killing them, the Cries of the Carrots, oh my god. He was making...
Are you talking about the vegetarian song?
He was making fun of vegans, yeah.
I hear the screams of the vegetables. Oh god, I know who that is.
It's not Maynard? Oh, I don't know.
Oh, let's see if I can find it. I remember
who it was. I just remember my stepson showed it.
Okay, Karen, have you clicked the link?
Karen, set us up with the intermission.
Yes.
It's the arrogant worms.
Okay, Brian, you need to give Karen the control. Give her the control.
I will give Karen the controls. I thought that because she was putting the video up just now, so all right.
Really? I don't see.
Well, no, wait. Who was sharing the Laci video? Was that you, Alison? Oh yeah,
that was me.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. Cool.
Okay. Yeah. Expand that sucker. There you go. And select Karen. Brian.
I have selected Karen.
All right. Then let's take a break.
What is this? An intermission? A break? What are you conniving political opportunists up to now? How dare you take a moment's breather from your scummy scam, you feckless gabernashes! If you don't continue to provide me content so I can complain that you're providing content, then you leave me no choice. I shall have to continue to complain with force. With force! Who's your manager? Who's in charge here? I want to speak to him and write a sternly worded letter.
Hi. Can I help you?
Oh, it's you! That disgusting animal-human hybrid right out of some sort of diesel moonshine fit. I want you to answer for yourself, and your vile crew of gutter snipes.
What is it that you have a problem with?
Oh, no, you don't! You're not going to ignore legitimate criticism by paying attention to it. I'm onto your shyster con act, dog creature. I want you to proceed to making content so I can complain about it at once.
Okay then. We're going to start the show.
Puh. You're going to hide legitimate criticism behind that bloody pervert paw prints. Stop it at once. Keep the camera on me. You're obliged to give me a platform to complain about your platform. No, don't you dare pull away like that. I've got the mic now, sonny boy, and you're not getting it back. Till I've said my piece. You're getting an earful now, my furry friend. I am dissatisfied. I don't like how you get ranty, but I also don't like the dispassionate reliance of facts. You look phony. Phony! You're all using men's vulnerabilities to make money by pointing them out. The only proper way to make money out of men's vulnerabilities is by telling men it's their own concerned fault they're vulnerable. That's the message men should pay for, not this mollycoddling codswallop soddery. Why, my grandpapa used to belt me one right in the face, and when I cried, he'd tell me that's why he did it. That's how a man should be raised. Give a sniffle and you get the switch. Men's rights. Why do men need rights? Rights? That's woman talk. A man should be able to support his entire family with nothing more than a thimble and a bucket full of shark chum. And if you fail to perform, you shall get dragged out back and shot. Why, my cousin Alger's always said a bullet is too good for a lazy whiner of a man.
Okay, so let's get back to the show.
All right. I think Brian might be slowly on his break, but I can only.
That was awesome.
Oh,
No, I'm here. I'm back.
You want to introduce the show?
Yes. So now, welcome to part 2 of our double feature, Honey Badger Radio number 53. Laci Green raped me.
Of my innocence.
Of my innocence. I just needed to.
My dignity.
I'm still triggered from the event, and it's hard for me to talk about. Laci Green raped me. She said it was stoked on me. She said I was pretty ripped. I'm your host, Brian, and I'm joined by Karen, Hannah, Anna, or Cherry, and Alison. And we're going to talk about false rape accusations. So this just sort of dovetails very nicely. Hello, Laci. Into the false rape allegation story. So, how shall we proceed?
Well, I actually have written up a few items from around the world, and we also have some personal anecdotes of false accusations that have affected our own lives. So, which would you like to do first, ladies and Doge?
Before we get into it, yeah, Hannah happened to hear the end of the Rantzerker and wants to make a correction. So, Hannah.
The Dear Colleague letter in the United States actually does have the force of law. This is something that the majority of people do not know, because when it was passed, it was done in the sneakiest way possible, which is basically the way most legislation like this gets passed in the United States. It was not its own law by itself with its own name, so everybody would know what it was and what was being done. It was a section put into the Violence Against Women Act renewal, passed so that it would take effect months later, so that it wasn't an immediate thing. It didn't have the debate that gets usually attributed to like bigger laws, but it's called the Campus Save Act, and it does put the entire Dear Colleague letter into federal law. So it is the Dear Colleague letter is federal law now, and it has been federal law since the update to the Violence Against Women Act passed. and it took effect the March after, I believe it was March or May. No, it was March. It was March after the March after the Violence Against Women Reauthorization Act was passed. It's called the Campus Sexual Violence Elimination Act. And if you look up a post that I wrote for A Voice for Men, this would be September 27th, 2013. It's called the Campus False Accuser Support Act is the name of the post. And it describes my process of finding out about this and contacting my legislators about it and getting a reply, which I only got a reply from my Democrat legislator, and he blew me off. Basically, and gave lip service, thinking that he was talking to a female who would be pleased about the law. But it is federal law. It is a federal requirement, and the reason that's obviously it's a bad thing because of what it legislates. But the reason it's good that it's federal law and not just policy is that it's easier to test it in court that way. You can actually call it unconstitutional and get it tested as a law and possibly removed. Whereas with a policy, a lot of times it's harder to take a policy to court. You end up having to go through channels.
Policies are easier to get in implemented and harder to get out.
Right.
Because of that, actually. I do want to say that the Dear Colleague letter is not that law. The Dear Colleague letter has no force of law.
Yes, it does. It existed in 2011 as the Dear Colleague letter. The law is the wording of the Dear Colleague letter copy-pasted into the Violence Against Women Act Reauthorization Act. So it is the same text, the exact same text. The Dear Colleague letter is now federal law. It's not called the Dear Colleague letter anymore. In 2011, the Dear Colleague letter came out. They made it policy at the federal level that universities would not get funding if they did not do what the Dear Colleague letter suggested. But now, as part of the Violence Against Women Reauthorization Act, the bill passed. Okay, it took effect in March 2014. I found it in the article. The bill passed in March 2012, and it took effect in March 2014, and it slipped by unnoticed by everybody because of it being part of the Violence Against Women Reauthorization Act. But everybody keeps talking about the Dear Colleague letter as if it's the only thing. It's not. It's an actual challengeable in court federal law now. There's a target, something that can be taken down. So as much as it sucks that it's a law, as wrong as it is that it's a law, and it shouldn't be a law, it shouldn't have been a policy in the first place.
Yeah, no, but it's good that it's a law because it's much easier to challenge and to have it strict from the statute.
Yeah, that's just it. This creates a vulnerability to the policy that did not exist when it was just policy. This is something that can be legally challenged in court and declared a violation of due process rights and violation to the right of the right to the pursuit of happiness. The idea that you can't go to college because somebody is unhappy that you're there, even if they can't prove that you did anything wrong.
Yeah, no, in violation of contract, too. Breach of contract is one of the means by which people who claim they've been falsely accused and falsely expelled or wrongfully expelled have actually taken it to court based on breach of contract as well. So
it sounds like a really bad thing that this is law, and it was very sneaky and everything, but it has its silver lining. Is that if you're kicked out of school based on this law, you can take the law to court. You can actually challenge the law in court. And I mean, if you want to read the article, the article's title is "The Campus False Accuser Support Act," and it's on avoiceformen.com.
All right. I'm not sure. I think the Doge is somewhere lurking in the background, perhaps shivering at the thought. of revisiting his experience with Laci Green.
Oh, no, I'm back. I thought you were going to just jump right into the...
Oh, okay. Well, actually, I was wondering if Hannah might be willing to read some of that stuff. It's on the show notes. She's got the really nice voice.
I have a decent voice too.
Yes,
and
you
I'm
do.
looking
Yes,
at
you
it.
do. Yeah. Okay. Well, if you wanna read.
If Hannah wants to.
Yeah, she says she doesn't have the show notes open, so you'd probably have to give her the link.
I'll just give you the link.
Yeah, just pop it in there.
Boop, boop, boop. We'll drop it in
Red
there.
rocket in.
Hey.
Oh goodness, sorry.
You're doing that thing again. You're forcing me to relive this traumatic experience.
Oh goodness.
Petted and heavy petting, is that what it is? Heavy
yes,
petting?
I guess it is heavy petting.
Yeah. All right, there
the
you go,
fur
Hannah.
doesn't protect you from some heavy petting. In fact, it might encourages it. And one might say that a doge is always asking for it when it comes to heavy petting.
Often, but not always.
Okay.
All right. Just because I said yesterday doesn't said yes yesterday does not mean I'll say yes today. Isn't that
Well, that's definitely true with cats. Just because I said yes 1 minute ago and showed you my stomach doesn't mean I'm not going to bite your hand right now as you try to pet my stomach. That's a cat logic for you. They're like they're definitely. Hannah, can you open up the show notes, or do we have to continue to prattle endlessly about nothing?
I'm actually looking for them right now.
Oh no!
Brian
gave you the link.
I sent the link.
Okay.
Try.
Because I went to our website and for some reason it's misbehaving and will not go to that page directly.
Yeah, that website's a little fucked up.
It's on its period, I think.
No, it's being a website tease.
I got him right here, so I can do it.
Yeah, just do the first one, and Hannah can do the second one.
There we go. That works.
My rating. Hopefully my rating isn't too bad.
Sure. False accusations. What?
Oh, I was going to say, yes, today is commemoration of people who are mostly men who are injured on the job or die on the job. So, it's a day of remembrance for those who've basically given their lives to keep our lives comfortable. And in particular, last year there was a bunch of severe weather, thunderstorms, lightning, and our electricity grid went down. And if you don't know where I live, I basically live in a place of deep freeze. And if the electricity goes down, people die. But while the crew was getting the electricity into my area back up, there was apparently a lightning strike and one of the crew died. So this is a day for remembering people who give their lives so that we can not freeze to death in our houses and for other reasons. Okay. Continue, Doge.
All right. False accusations and the 2% number. In summary, feminism, specifically legal dominance feminism's methodology and discourse around rape is fundamentally flawed. At the core of LDF discourse on rape is the proposition that women don't lie about sexual abuse. The foundation for such a bold statement is the claim that false accusations of rape are very rare. Specifically, its proponents claim that no more than 2% of such complaints are invalid. In an attempt to shift the laws of governing rape to correspond with this purported social reality, LDF advocates shifting the burden of proof from the woman complaining of the alleged sexual wrong to the man defending against it. Were it empirically true that only 2% of those charged with rape were innocent, LDF's solutions might represent a reasonable public policy. But if, as may well be the case, as many as a quarter of the men currently accused of rape are actually innocent, then the goals of LDF are truly destructive. First, the proportion of wrongful convictions would certainly rise if LDF's program were fully implemented. Second, as demonstrated in this study, wrongful convictions would fall disproportionately on black youths. One highly respected legal academic elected by her peers as president of the prestigious Association of American Law Schools recently reported that The overwhelming consensus in research relying on government data is that false reports account for only about 2% of rape complaints. It is indisputably true that, largely though, through the efforts of legal dominance feminists, there now exists a consensus among legal academics that only 2% of rape complaints are false. This purportedly empirical statement is ubiquitously repeated in legal literature. Dozens of law review articles reiterate that no more than 1 in 50 rape complaints are false. This empirical fact, however, is an ideological fabrication. The following are a few of the ways in which feminists distort the truth in order to spread their misinformation. 1. The overwhelming consensus. This 2% statistic only comes from one person who happened to be highly respected in law, Susan Brownmiller. 2. The problems with determining the percentage of false rape claims. How to determine that which cannot be accurately counted. 3. Indirect measures of wrongful rape accusations. In a significant fraction of instances, the accusers recant their charges. In others, where no formal recantation occurs, but where rape may have occurred, there are good reasons to believe that the accusation must nevertheless be wrong about the identity of the assailant. 3. This 2% false claim figure is unreliable for the above reasons. And then lastly, this leads us to the myth that women do not lie, especially about rape. Can we dig even deeper to find the truth? Can it be found at all? Let's roll up our sleeves and see what we can come up with. All right, discuss. Are you guys there? Did I get dropped out of the call? Oh, no.
No, you didn't. You're still here.
Okay.
I did want to say, like, a lot of, when we were doing the "Don't Be That Girl" posters in Edmonton, someone named Karen Smith, who runs, manages a rape crisis center here in Edmonton, called Sexual Assault Voices of Edmonton or something like that. Anyhow, she said, essentially, why would a woman falsely report rape? Why would she put herself through that grueling process, blah, 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 and she's being poked and prodded in the most personal areas of her body, where she's been violated and blah. Well, yeah, no. You can't re-victimize somebody who is not a victim. And, here's the thing. If putting yourself through the process as a false accuser, right, was, it's not the same as putting yourself through the process as a genuine victim. There are disincentives for genuine victims, right? For false accusers, that's reversed, right? And there are incentives to do it, and there are no disincentives. You're not getting re-victimized. You're not getting re-traumatized. The process is only as grueling as you make it. If you are doing it for attention, then the process itself is the entire purpose, right? The process itself is the reason that you're falsely reporting, right? But if you're lying to, construct an alibi or to get out of, to explain away a pregnancy or an STD or whatever, right, or to get out of some kind of trouble, then the process of reporting is actually going to be less traumatizing than admitting that to your husband that you're pregnant by another man, or that you have an STI from another man, or whatever, right? The entire mindset of feminists is completely fucking bizarre. They literally think that false accusers will have the exact same perspective on the process of reporting as victims would. It's weird.
Hello?
Wow, is nobody gonna speak? Hello?
Actually,
Go ahead.
I can point out.
Oh, that was me. That was the strange sounds came from me.
Oh.
Okay. No, my mute button is being a butt again today, so apparently.
What's the button?
Yeah. I actually wanted to have a little bit of an addition to the Brownmiller thing. Susan Brownmiller's 2% statistic actually came from, I think, one cop who she asked once, and she respected his opinion, and she got very upset. She gets very upset when people point that out, and she actually wrote to. There's a blogger who actually wrote a whole article about her lack of credibility on this statistic, and she's actually saying she cited the New York City Rape Analysis Squad. She says here, the site from the New York City Rape Analysis Squad was reported by Judge Lawrence Cook to the New York Bar Association in 1974. Cook was leading appellate justice at the time. Cook, the Bar Association, and the New York City Rape Analysis Squad were impeccable sources. So she's basically using an appeal to authority to back this. And I get this thrown at me from feminists all the time, that this appeal to authority, these people are not questionable. You can't question what they say. But these are also the same people that get called misogynists and thugs for questioning the accusations of women. So when the police, when the judges, when the Bar Association, any lawyers involved in these cases doubt a woman's word, they're dirt under her feet. But when they come out and say only 2% of rape accusations are false, suddenly they are impeccable sources that are not to be questioned.
I was just going to say, wait, so Susan Brown Miller spoke to one cop one time, and we're actually, people who are citing this to this day are getting essentially, third or fourth hand information passed down, from this sort of anecdotal incident. But so she spoke to this one cop one time, and he said something, and she ran with it. Yeah, and it was just giving his opinion. But going back to what we were talking about before, there was one cop one time in Toronto that said, I shouldn't say this, but, if you want to, protect yourself, you might not want to dress like sluts or whatever. So one cop one time said something, and depending on the content of what he said, it's either really bad information or it's really, really good information, right?
Yeah, but without any evidence either way, right? Without any presentation of evidence either way. And what gets me too is that the judge, Brown Miller got that from a mimeograph of a speech that was given by that judge to an assembly of lawyers and police officers, right? But this was after. Right after they had essentially, if I recall, designated that all sex assault investigators in that particular jurisdiction, or a high majority of them, would be women, and they would have special training, right? So essentially, what you have is they're looking at they were implementing listen and believe, right? And then they came out and said, oh, only 2% of these cases are false, right? And it was just the opinions of the department, the given department, and repeated in this speech by this judge. There's no data to back it up. There's no documentation to back that up. It's just the judge heard it from these particular cops after this entire frickin' sexual assault investigation department got revamped and infested with listen and believe feminist ideology, right? And then they were like, oh yeah, no, only 2% of reports are false, right? So it was essentially, it wasn't even just one person's opinion. It was a completely biased opinion of people who had been given special training by feminists. So there you go. Imagine that.
So in other words, essentially, it is a feminist another example of feminist self-citation. We said this to people and they repeated it, therefore it's true.
Yep.
That seems to be all they can do. They can't come up with evidence of anything that they claim because they're making false claims. They're full of shit. So the only thing they can do is create enough of a complicated cycle of handing it off from person to person to convince everybody that one of the sources in the list of trade-offs there is credible enough to believe, and it creates a false credibility, a false sense of credibility for their information. And you can find that if you trace the path back for any feminist fact. You can go through the citations, go all the way back to the beginning. They're basically just making it up and then creating the illusion of having proved it.
Yeah, no, it's like an incestuous process of like cross-pollination of citations, right? All essentially finding their way back to one dubious source, right? And they give the illusion of being legitimate because everybody, I mean, and this is the same thing with, whenever you bring up that men are the majority of suicides, and a feminist responds, well, but women attempt suicide much more often than men. Now, the only actual piece of data I have found, because I've found lots of citations, I've found lots of research papers and studies and stuff that have said women attempt suicide much more often than men, and they link to some other study that makes the exact same claim, not quantifying it, citing some other study that says the exact same claim, not quantifying it, not linking to data, right? The only data I have been able to ever find puts the rate of suicide attempts, suicidal ideation, and self-harm all lumped together, so cutting and things like that, right? 5 women per 4 men have reported engaging in these things, right? Have reported having suicidal thoughts, having attempted suicide, or having self-harmed. 5 women for every 4 men, right? And dead people don't tell tales, so none of the completed suicides are included in that number, right? That is not women attempting suicide much more often. Suicidal ideation is not the same as a suicide attempt. Cutting is not the same as a suicide attempt, right? I had friends that cut themselves, but never once frickin' attempted to die, right? And I know people who made a half-hearted attempt, took a handful of pills, right? And then made a phone call saying, I just tried to kill myself, and then everybody comes running, right? Just in time. Cry for help, right? That's not the same as a genuine attempt. And all of these are lumped together, 5 women for every 4 men of the people who survive all of that stuff, right? That is not women attempt suicide much more often. It's not, right? But you see it cited constantly, and it always links to some other unsubstantiated claim that's not quantified and not attached to any data. It just says, everybody knows that women attempt suicide much more often than men do.
Yeah.
It's just common knowledge.
All right. Hannah, do you want to do the other write-up that Alison put together?
Yep, I can do that. Let me... Oh, of course, it just went to the bottom of the screen. Now that... I didn't even do anything. I just clicked on it. Good grief. Okay. So, there it is, Alison's take. And the first sentence is a reminder, again, that it's Workers' Memorial Day. But since Alison already talked about that, I'm not going to read it. So the title of this one is False Accusations in Scotland Prevent Male Victims from Receiving Help. According to the report, What We Know from Abused Men in Scotland, the Scottish Domestic Abuse Helpline that police refer men to is labeling its male clients as abusers based on criteria not employed for female clients. The labeling system allows for 3 possible labels for help-seeking men. The only one that does not emphasize the man as a perpetrator also categorically excludes him from being a victim as well. The other two levels label him as a perpetrator of domestic violence, but differ in severity, with one label indicating he hasn't engaged in high-risk incidents in the last 4 months, while the other indicates he is currently abusive toward his partner. There is no label for a man who is the victim of domestic violence. The report goes on to describe one incident in which this is hampering the ability of a male victim to seek help. So at the moment, I'm trying to help a man access refuge accommodation in another part of Wales. His ex-partner has made allegations that he abused her, as a result of which his local police have labeled him as a grave and serious risk, and in consequence, he can't be allocated refuge space anywhere. We know that his partner has made these allegations because she's trying to find out where he's hiding at the moment. She hopes that if he appears in court, she could discover his address and carry out her threat to have him beaten up really severely. It's manipulation of the system. If the boot was on the other foot and the genders were reversed in this case, there would be no question about what would happen. The authorities would reinterpret the situation with the woman as the victim, but once a man has been accused of being a perpetrator, getting that label changed is really, really difficult. The aid line in question is run by a partnership, or run in partnership by the National Domestic Violence Helpline and the Women's Aid and Refuge. And then there's a website here. And then there's 2 articles. Do you want me to read the next thing?
Do you guys want to discuss that? Like, it's pretty
because
horrifying.
I think this is actually something that's going on in the United States too, and I think it's probably going on in Canada too, where they have a criteria set so that when men call these helplines, these domestic abuse helplines, if they answer that they have ever yelled or that they've put their hands up to defend themselves or anything at all to stop the woman from assaulting them, they get labeled the abuser. If that's not going on, they still get redirected to anger management hotlines. The language of complaining about being abused gets used to interpreted and used to label them aggressive, and they actually end up in a worse position in some cases because they've called these hotlines. And it's not all the hotlines in the United States, but I've known guys who have called for help, and like not just called for help with situations where they're being nagged or being smacked by somebody that's smaller than them and they can get away, but actually dealing with someone who's almost a foot taller than them and throws heavy objects at them, and they get told that they've probably done something to make her angry, or they get told that they need to get themselves out of the situation because there isn't a resource available for a man in that situation, or they get told that they can't defend themselves because if they defend themselves, they're the abuser. And there's a local man involved in the case I'm going to talk about later, the second husband of the guy whose false accusation I'll describe, who's the same woman had him trapped in a room, in an upper story room, and was throwing things at him, and he went to jail for 18 months for pushing past her to get out of the room. So he basically shouldered past her, no bruises, no damage, no nothing, but because he touched her on the way out, he was the assailant, and all of the things that she was doing, throwing heavy objects, throwing sharp objects, throwing punches, none of that mattered. Just the fact that on the way out, he shoved her aside to get away. And that's going on everywhere. And feminists have influenced this particular industry to the point where any violence the woman commits gets considered preemptive self-defense the moment the man defends himself from her in any way. And that's how they quote-unquote justify labeling the abuse victim the abuser and the abuser the victim.
I included that because I just thought it was like this guy is being subject to a false accusation because his abuser wants to basically flush him out so that she can probably kill him, well, or at least beat him severely. I think that's and the system is enabling it. Like this refuge, the so-called refuge in Scotland, that only has labels for male abusers, and the only label that is neutral basically denies the fact that they can be victims. Because you can only have a label that says you are neither a perpetrator or a victim of domestic violence as a man. And the only other labels are you are a perpetrator of varying degrees. That's just fucking unbelievable. And it's unfortunately this helpline was linked. A poster for this helpline was linked in Men's Rights Reddit. And luckily, a poster said, you know, this, or a poster or a redditor on Reddit said, you know, this helpline doesn't help men. It's you should be very careful when you go on this helpline because you could be labeled yourself an abuser. And you most likely will be, because who hasn't raised their voice to their partner, especially when their partner is violent? You know, who hasn't done something defensive against a violent, well, I mean, if you aren't in a violent relationship, but if you are in a violent relationship, the likelihood of you doing something defensive against someone who is violent is very high. And all of that will get you labeled an abuser in this system as a man. So anyway, someone on Reddit posted a poster with this link to this particular helpline. And then luckily another Redditor came by and said, you know, this is not helpful for men. This helpline is not helpful for men. It basically just identifies them as abusers. And I said, actually, so could you give some evidence of that? Because he hadn't offered any evidence, just an accusation. And then he came back with this report. So I was like, yeah, I mean, I wasn't going to believe it if he didn't have evidence for it. But there's this report now that they actually do. That is exactly what they do. When male callers call up, they get screened into 3 categories, one of which is neutral and doesn't even allow that they're an abuse victim, and the other 2 are as abusers. It's like, and they don't do that to women. I mean, where's the listen and believe now? This is supposed to be a support. Like, could you imagine that? A rape helpline and women call up and they divide them into wasn't raped or false accuser. Like, really?
This actually reminds me, I forget who it was, but it was somebody in Australia. He actually went and parsed some of the sort of policies of assessing risk and engaging in prevention of domestic violence and things like that in Australia. And it essentially said that, it had a set of guidelines for women that were all essentially, yeah, take her word for it, she's calling you for help, give her help, blah, 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 right? And then for men who call and say they've been abused, the policies, the training manuals essentially say don't trust them. A lot of men who are abusers often use false allegations of abuse as a tool of abuse and all of this other shit, right? All of this shit that we know women do, right? Because they can, right? Because they get away with it, right? All of a sudden we're suspecting men, the people who are least likely to report to police that they're being abused to begin with, right? They are the ones that you have to be suspicious of. You have to be suspicious that they're falsely reporting having been abused as a means of harnessing the system in order to perpetrate abuse on their partners and all of this other shit, right? This is just fucking how it is for men. Like, literally, it's written into policy in Australia. Don't trust the man who says he's abused by his female partner because he's probably lying to get her into trouble as a way of continuing his abuse of her.
In the United States, there is something similar. Although, if your partner is male, if it's a man and his partner is male, then they have some resources. In fact, they assume first, if you're calling, unless you immediately start talking about a female partner, that you're a man being abused by another man. which is kind of odd because the least amount of abusiveness in relationships is among gay men. The highest is among lesbians, not among straight people. And the lowest percentage is in among gay men. But if a man calls, their first assumption is that the partner abusing him must also be male. And as soon as they find out they're dealing with somebody with a female partner, they'll change their tune immediately. Even if they do have resources, a lot of times they don't have a place for a man to stay. Where there's a shelter for women, they will put a man up in a hotel room, or they will direct him to a homeless shelter where he can only stay for a few days. But as far as a long-term resource like what's available for women attempting to escape abusive relationships, you don't really have that.
All right. Does anybody else, or you want to go on to the next story, or does anybody else have something they want to speak to on this? Is anybody here? Okay.
Yes, well, I'm here, but I'm waiting for you to move on to the next. What the hell do you have behind you now?
Oh, it's Laci Green still.
Oh.
Okay, so let's see. We want to the new study on
Laci Green is pretending to be edgy. You know,
Laci
kind
Green
of,
is
okay.
being
All
edgy.
right. So, well,
yeah.
do we want Hannah to read the next
Yeah.
item?
Do you want me to read it? Okay. A new study on rape reports in Israel finds up to 40% false. A new study in Israel has found that between 15 and 40% of alleged rape accusations are false. The study also noted there is a policy of lenience by the state attorney's office and state prosecution toward women who file false complaints. It also appears the state attorney believes that Israeli men bear collective guilt for the crimes of a few sexual predators. That's interesting, especially since that's the end of the article. But it's especially interesting since there was an effort to get Israel's rape law degendered a few years ago, and feminist groups in Israel fought successfully to prevent male victims from being recognized as rape victims under the law, and they used the belief that men would use false accusations to get out of rape accusations as their reasoning. That if men were accused of rape, they would file a counter accusation, and that would confound the rape case. So here we have, no wonder they're suspecting that men would file false, because women are filing false rape accusations.
I know, it's like because false accusations only matter if men can make them, right?
Right, false accusations only matter if men can make them. And of course, it's kind of consistent. This is an area that feminists have been, citing the Middle East, the Far East, India, all of these areas that are like farther away, and Americans and Canadians are maybe not as overtly familiar with the local culture and everything. Feminists have been portraying them as anti-woman and very patriarchal societies where women don't have a fair shake if sexual violence is committed against them. And here we found out a while back that in India they have a 65 to 85% rate for false accusation. And this is based on some articles in the Hindu where they had actually evaluated cases in, I believe, Delhi, which is one of the most populated cities. And here we have, like, I wrote a summary of it, and I made a graphic of this summary that I share on Twitter on a regular basis because it was such a shocking thing to learn. According to this article, they discovered that, and this was like this was just a few months of the police record on this, but complaints registered with the court by police in Delhi in 2013. Out of all those, like 40% turned out to be consensual sex, reported by parents who didn't want their kids involved. 25% were women responding to breach of promise to marry. So that's the 65%. And then another 20% of cases were closed for various reasons, including the accuser not following through, the accuser turning hostile, or the accuser confessing to falsely accusing. And only 15% then of the remaining cases turned out to merit a trial. The rest that were brought to trial were only brought to trial because in India, if you don't bring a case against the accused when a rape accusation is filed, legal action can be taken against the police for not doing that. So they have to register a case even if they don't believe the victim, even if or the accuser, even if the accuser refuses to cooperate with the case, even if the accuser is hostile, they still have to bring a case because they can be penalized or sued for not bringing a case. And that's like totally different from in the United States. So here we have all these areas that feminists have been making this big deal about, treating them as massive rape cultures, and it looks like they're getting knocked down one at a time as massive false accusation cultures.
Well, it's not. I have to interject that it's not just feminists that are treating these cultures as massive rape cultures. It's conservatives too. It's websites like Breitbart. It's who are websites that are sort of overtly anti-feminist in their rhetoric, also consider these types of cultures to be massive rape cultures, and there are some instances, and the instances of like the really horrific ones, the one with the woman on the bus in India who was gang raped and died from her injuries, and her boyfriend almost died trying to defend her from the assault. Those cases gain international attention, and they sort of paint the entire culture as this horrific kind of rape culture. But when you actually look at the daily lives of men in India, I mean, like my boyfriend works for a guy who grew up as a Tamil, dark-skinned Tamil in India, so extremely low status, just in terms of sort of the caste system and the race system there in where he came from. His older sister it was expected that if anybody was going to give her any kind of trouble, he as this tiny little, he's like 6 inches shorter than me and like less, he weighs less than me, and he was even smaller as a child. It was fully expected that he would physically intervene and defend her, right? And that other men on the street would physically intervene and defend her. And you even look at that "How Can She Slap" video, where the woman, like you have these game show contestants who they've all signed a contract saying that they are safe from assault, that there will be no physical assault whatsoever, guaranteed. And the female host slaps one of them across the face, and a tenth of a second later he slaps her back, right? It was a reflexive response, and he got the ever-loving shit beat out of him by like 20 guys who all rushed in to defend this woman who had initiated the violence, right, from a position of authority, in violation of a contract that guaranteed his safety, right? And so you essentially have a culture that is sort of predicated on men's responsibility to protect women, and you have this bizarre system in law. And anybody who wants to actually look into this, look up Deepika Bardwaj or Barjwan, or I'll find the fucking
Bardwaj.
Yeah.
Deepika Bardwaj, I think, is who you're talking about.
Yeah, she gets into dowry abuse laws, rape laws, all of this stuff, right? I mean, the whole reason that women can bring a charge of breach of rape because of breach of contract or breach of promise, even if they weren't promised marriage, they've they've now decided that they want to get married, right? And that was never part of the plan when they had the consensual sex, but she got pregnant, or her neighbors are making comments behind their hands about her or whatever, and now she's changed her mind. She wants to get married to legitimate the sexual relationship. And she can bring a charge against him, and the vast majority of those cases in particular, or she wants him to marry her, he promised to marry her, but his parents won't allow it, right? And so she brings a charge of rape in order to coerce the parents to give permission for him to marry her, right? And the vast majority of these cases are resolved through the marriage of the rapist and his victim, right? And I guarantee you 15 years from now, feminists in India will say, only 15 years ago in India, women were forced to marry their rapists, when in reality, the charge is only brought to coerce marriage out of the man, right? And the only one forced to do anything is the man. He's forced to either marry her or spend 15 years in jail, right? And when you actually look at the structure of the law, right, to even dance around the idea that this is a culture that condones the rape of women, that condones sexual violence against women, that condones male violence against women in any form whatsoever. If you look at the laws, if you look at the customs, if you look at the expectations on an 8-year-old boy to protect his 12-year-old sister, right, who's 8 inches taller than he is, right? This is, it's completely batshit insane, and it's not just feminists who are perpetuating that idea. It's conservatives too. It is a form of othering, and it's the most effective form of othering, as we all learned, hopefully, from watching Alison's speech at Simon Fraser University. It is the most effective form of demonizing another culture, is by saying they are coming to hurt our women, or they're so awful they harm their own women.
I just wanted to throw in there also that the false rape accusations in India that Hannah was talking about, I had an article open that showed false rape cases soar in Delhi as number of acquittals hit 78%. This was in 2014. And I was kind of turned on to this when I had Jyoti Tiwari on a fireside chat about 2 weeks ago, and she goes into some length about all of this and how much not only false rape accusations go on there, but also the rape hysteria and the othering, and part of it has to do with the caste system and such. But these are incredibly high numbers. So maybe in the West it's like, the FBI has found that it's 8%, but in India, it gets pretty crazy high. And
well, there's a completely different cultural context here, right? Like, so essentially, if your neighbors discover that you're banging some guy and you're having sort of a casual or cohabitation relationship with him or whatever, or you're having a regular sexual relationship with him outside of marriage, right? There's going to be a certain stigma attached to that doesn't exist in the West anymore, right? And so there's a different set of motivators, there's a different set of incentives and disincentives for a woman to bring a what is essentially a false charge, right? She may feel justified in bringing that charge, right? Because of the social cost that she pays for having consensual sex and having her neighbors know what she's doing, right? And she may only bring that charge because she wants to coerce the marriage, right? Not because she wants to see him in prison. So, I mean, it's a means to an end for her. And it really is a matter of solving a problem, right? Making the charge of rape solves more problems than it creates for that woman in that cultural context, in that situation. Right, and it's a completely different set of incentives and disincentives just like I said, I'm pretty sure between 1691 and 1692, the rates of false reporting of witchcraft were completely different. It's not something I think that stays static. I don't think that there's a a given percentage of all reports that is always going to be false, no matter the place, no matter the era, no matter the culture, no matter the overarching maybe context of what's going on in the media, all of those things, right? Hysterias happen, those lead to false reports. You have situations like with Ghomeshi and Cosby and other individuals where you sort of have a bandwagon effect of women just kind of piling on and making some of them are making genuine reports, but some of them are going to be making false reports, like that one former model who accused Cosby of raping her at the Playboy Mansion, right? So, I mean, it's not a number that it's not a number that we can know, and it's not a number that's going to stay static from year to year or place to place or be always applicable. And depending on what kind of penalties are involved, and there are no penalties in a place like India at the moment for a false rape accusation, or a place like Israel, there are no penalties whatsoever, even if a woman is completely brazen about it, even if she has been caught red-handed. And I've seen instances of a cab driver's dashboard camera, right, catching a woman not only, and he's phoning the police to try to get her out of his cab because she's being violent and belligerent, and she's literally sitting in the passenger seat screaming rape and slapping herself in the face so that the cops can hear her being slapped over the phone, right? And it's all being caught on camera. And she never faced any consequences for that. So, I mean, if that's the situation, right, then you're going to incentivize false reports. And there are things that you can do to disincentivize them. So I think that like the whole idea that, X percentage of rape reports are false, it's a useless number, because it's going to change. It's going to change from 1 year to the next. It's going to change from one jurisdiction to another. It's going to change from one culture to another. It's going to change based on a lot of factors. So, yeah, India and Israel right now are unbelievable. And in China, oh my God, just recently they removed boys from the protection of statutory rape laws. And an 11-year-old boy was charged as an adult with rape for having sex with his same-age girlfriend.
Oh.
Because he's no longer protected by statutory rape laws. There's no age of consent laws for boys anymore in China.
I wonder how long it'll be before we hear a story of an 11-year-old boy getting charged with rape because a 30-year-old woman changed her mind.
I think that's actually happened in India.
No, that's not surprising in India. They still have adult women marrying boys and adult men marrying girls there, don't they, under some circumstances?
I don't know whether those circumstances, marriage is one thing. Consummation of the marriage tends to happen when it's appropriate.
Later.
Yeah. But so you can be, and a lot in the West too, right? In our history, sometimes people would be married at age she'd be 8 and he'd be 11 or something like that, and it wouldn't get consummated until they were sexually mature.
Older.
Right. But
I also wanted to say something else about India, and this is something that, like, a lot of times in the West, because of the way things are for us now, we may not understand all the dynamics that can lead to false accusations there. You sort of have to look back in our history, back sort of after slavery had ended, but during the time when there were Jim Crow laws and there was still just as much prejudice and just as much hatred as there was before slavery ended, sometimes in some cases in some areas even more. There were a lot of instances where black men were accused of rape and hanged by women who had later it could be proved that they voluntarily had sex with them, that it wasn't a forced encounter. It was that they couldn't admit that they had sex with a black man. And one of the problems that one of the attitudes that facilitated this murder was because the prejudice of the time period had people viewing them as just innately predatory and innately bad, even if it can be proved that there was no force, that there was no coercion, that it was all voluntary. It was still viewed as a predatory act. It was still viewed as a forced act because he, forcibly seduced her, or he forcibly did this, and he had all the blame because he was black. Well, the caste system. Yeah. The caste system has a similar dynamic to that. Yeah. If you throw in, you combine the type of attitude that racists had towards black men with respect to women, and you could sort of see this in the novel and in the movie To Kill a Mockingbird, where it was outright proved, and he was still convicted. That same attitude combined with the attitude that not all rich people are like this, obviously, but people who are of higher wealth classes will sometimes have towards people in poverty or people of lower income classes in the West. You combine those two things together, you get the attitude of a higher caste toward a lower caste. So if a young woman from a higher caste gets caught with a man from a lower caste, even if he can prove that he did not commit a forcible rape or coerce her, he can still get branded a rapist because of those prejudices, because he's viewed as being not just a lower class person, but actually of a thuggish, predatory nature, and he's responsible for her choice.
Well, I think too, it's not even necessarily that he's considered thuggish and predatory, but that he has no right to touch somebody who is above his station. So even if she seduced him, he should have refused her. And, he should have known his place. He should have known his place was not to lay a finger on a woman who was so far above him. I think that this has a lot to do with it. And if you look at the woman on the bus in India, and if you look at most of the cases that have made sort of international news in India that caused an uproar within India, in most of those cases, it was men raping up caste. They were raping women who were above their status. And when men raping down caste, I wouldn't say they're a dime a dozen in India. I don't think that rape is particularly rampant in India. But those cases tend to fly under the media radar because they don't inspire the type of outrage that sort of this idea of the high status woman who is a woman of quality being touched, having a filthy gutter dweller putting his disgusting hands on her, right? And so I don't even think that you necessarily need to have that sort of element of we see these lower class men as being predatory, or we see them as being, forcibly coercing or being overtly seductive. We actually see them as simply having no right to touch a woman who is so elevated, so high above them. Even if she invites it, even if she's the initiator, even if she seduces him, even if she holds him down and has her way with him, like Fanny Hill did with the stable boy in the novel, right? It's still his fault because he should have known that it was not okay for him to even go along to allow her to seduce him, because she's above him and he has no right to put his hands on her. I think that has something to do with it too.
All right, you want to move on to the next story? Hannah?
Is there a next story?
There's like the woman in Spain.
Yeah, there's a Spanish one.
We segued. I know that there is an India story, but we were actually talking about Israel when that happened. So.
Oh goodness, you people! You're.
Should we skip or should we reverse them and do the India story and then the Spain story?
Yeah, since we're still talking about India.
Yeah. Man acquitted of charges of criminal intimidation in Delhi, just where we were talking about. A man has been acquitted of charges of criminal intimidation and extortion by a Delhi court. Man says that the charges were invented in an attempt to put pressure on him to divorce his wife. His father-in-law pressured his daughter to file the charges and alleged that the man married his daughter under duress by having her sign blank pieces of paper and taking her to an unknown place to be forcibly married. The court observed that the photographs from the event did not show any duress or pressure, and that there was a delay of 4 months in filing the complaint, dismissing the charges. And what is this? This is an image. This is another false case, man acquitted from extortion case. So this actually, it's listed in the news media as yet another. This happens so often. There's actually a hashtag. If you look up hashtag false cases on Twitter, you'll see that there's a great deal of discussion on this, and it exists due to a seriously flawed domestic violence law in India that Indian men's rights activists are attempting to get overturned or altered so that it isn't encouraging false accusations. They're using false accusations in India very much the same way they're getting used in the United States in custody and property disputes, and they're using it in India with respect to their dowry traditions as well. So, discuss.
Yeah, and the issue with dowry abuse too is that it's not just the man who is often implicated. I mean, there are his parents often end up sitting in jail awaiting trial. His sisters, his brothers, sometimes his cousins. Sometimes like his 14-year-old cousin. So I mean, like the entire family can be implicated in a false accusation of dowry abuse, and they all end up paying the price. And Deepika actually mentioned a case where a 4-year-old child was named. Officially named in a case of dowry abuse as one of the perpetrators, right? Like it essentially, the law allows somebody to essentially accuse and indict and punish a whole family for just based on an accusation. The process is the punishment essentially, because these people end up sitting in jail for God knows how long. Just to wait for their chance to possibly exonerate themselves, right? That's the way that, because the law is set up to protect this poor woman, you know, because of the burning brides and all of this other stuff, right? So because the situation is seen as so desperate and she needs protection that much, then it justifies locking away an entire family until it goes to trial. So bail is kind of not even a thing, and the whole family goes to prison to await trial, and oh my fucking God, it can completely destroy lives. It's awful.
Anna.
Yeah.
Anna.
Oh no, the mute button is eating Anna.
What?
It's eating us all.
What do I have to do with anything?
Oh, you mentioned Memphis.
I suddenly got called to the front of the class.
Oh, never mind that. No, yeah.
Oh, no,
Go up to the board and solve this algebra problem right now.
I can talk about it. I was actually just looking at the article, scanning for Logic Control F to see if my person's name is mentioned in it. Okay, that's a no. But no, yeah, we were funny mentioning the rape kits backlog situation. I haven't actually read the article, so I don't know what the deal is. But there is this massive backlog of untested rape kits, and I actually knew someone in college. Funny story, my very first modeling gig before I even ever thought I could model was in my freshman year of college, and a dude friend who knew editors at the Memphis Flyer was like, hey, editors at Memphis Flyer, I know all these girls from Rhodes College. You should like have them be in the photo shoot. And it was me and this other girl and Megan Ubos, who is now involved in legislature that is attempting to get these rape kits tested in Memphis. And that's how I found out that anything was even happening in Memphis about rape kits, was because I found her positive seeming comment, a very short but a positive comment on my YouTube videos about like my Anita Sarkeesian parody YouTube videos. where I talk about like in ways which shit's biased against men actually. And she positively mentioned something there, and I looked her up, and she's like involved in this rape kit situation, and I'm actually legitimately confused to this point if she was being sarcastic or if she for real thought that I made valid points but just wants to make sure this law is passed. I don't know. It's kind of interesting, and the Memphis Flyer is actually mentioned in this article too. That's very funny. So anyway, yeah, I was a model in the Memphis Flyer in like 2006, so there you go. That's the end of my story.
Oh. Yeah, on the rape kit thing, that's actually a problem throughout the U.S. in numerous states where they've had, and it's actually kind of a complicated situation because it's not like there's a lab out there with a bunch of rape test kits, in it, and people are going, we'll just get to those later. We don't have to do that. Part of the problem is that they are having difficulty finding people qualified to do the job. So there's a shortage of workers. There's a shortage of places to get them tested. There's a shortage of, essentially, there's a shortage of facility and faculty that's contributing to this problem. And more than one state has had politicians striving to introduce legislation that will increase budgetary stipulations for this so that they can hire more people, so they can pay more labs or increase the number of labs that qualify and things like that in order to get this done. And it's like one of the very few things that, even though our reasons for both sides of the coin having an interest in this would not be the same. MRAs and feminists could both agree on the fact that this needs to be remedied. Now, granted, feminists make a big deal about this under the claim that all kinds of rapists are running around free because these kits are not getting tested and they're not getting used in court. And of course, MRAs have, the understanding that failure to test a rape kit could get a guy convicted as well. If they don't actually go through and find the information and they're using other evidence, they're using like the old hair tests and they're using he said, she said, and they're using listen and believe, that significantly increases the chance of a false conviction. And so it's entirely possible that without that DNA testing, without testing to find out whether or not there's any proof that he was even with a girl, a guy could get jailed, could get convicted, or could end up getting pressured into a plea bargain based on believing that he cannot get a fair trial, and end up in jail when he didn't belong there. So both sides could very easily agree that this is something that, even though we don't agree why, we don't necessarily agree that there's a bunch of men going scot-free because the rape kit wasn't tested, and feminists probably don't agree that there's a bunch of men getting falsely convicted due to this lack of testing, but we can agree that this testing is absolutely necessary and that the situation with the shortage of facilities and faculty to actually do the testing is egregious and needs to be remedied.
I don't exactly agree. I don't exactly agree. Because like the cop said in Laci Green's video, right? And he was using this as an excuse to not test rape kits, right? Okay. And he said the majority of the complaints of rape that reach our police department stem from consensual sex. Okay. Now, in a situation like that, right, it's a woman accusing a specific man, and it's a man admitting, yes, we had sex, but it was consensual, and demonstrating to the satisfaction of the police, right, that either the sex was consensual or there's not enough evidence that it wasn't to bring it to trial. Okay? So there's no need to test a rape kit in that case. There's no need to test the DNA evidence, right? You can read the medical report and see, you can see automatically if there's injuries and things like that. The testing of the rape kit is just for DNA evidence. That's the only fucking thing, is to identify the person who was responsible for the rape. Now, if it's been determined that you're not going to, that someone has been identified and they have admitted, yes, we had sex on that night, right?
Okay? There's no reason to test the rape kit. There's no reason to go to that expense. And on top of that, some of these rape kits that are sitting untested because the police have no right to look at them. Because until a woman makes a complaint, right, that rape kit is part of her personal, private medical history, and the police have no right to look at it, right? She has to make a complaint and give the police permission to look at that information and test that rape kit. And right now, if I walked into an ER and said, with a gunshot wound, and I said, I swear to God, I had an accident cleaning my gun, there was no crime committed here, right? They have a responsibility under the law to call the police and report a possible felony having been committed, right? But if I go in and I announce to them, I'm the victim of a felony, I was raped, right? They have no right to contact the police, right? So essentially, it's all on me. When I go in and I get my exam and I get my rape kit done, it's all on me, and it's all my decision whether the police have any right to look at that rape kit, any right to know that I have made this claim to the ER, to the staff at the ER. They don't have any right to even fucking look at it. So, yes, we need more staff to look at these rape kits, but in the case of this cop, right, who was featured in Laci Green's video, right, and he says, well, the majority of the cases are, they stem from consensual sex. Okay, well, that tells me that there's somebody who's been accused and he said, yeah, that's my fucking DNA. Well, why? Why would they bother going to the expense of proving that it's his DNA? He just admitted it. He said, yeah, I fucked her, right? And there's still
rape kits are not done because of every accusation. Not every accusation results in a rape. A rape kit happens when a woman goes into the ER and says that she's been raped. And that happens, generally speaking, that does not happen when somebody goes, a week or a month later to the cops and says this happened, or when they go to their university and they complain to somebody in their university and start going through that process before deciding to go to the police, where it's stemming from consensual sex. It happens when she goes into the emergency room after an injury or after an emergency, or she gets up, she wakes up when she wakes up at the end of a party and she's been unconscious and she suspects that she's been drugged or raped, or her friends convince her that it might have happened. That's when they go into the ER and they say they've been raped and they get a rape kit done. And many of those do involve situations where either the girl is accusing somebody who has said, no, I haven't been with this person, or she doesn't know who she's accusing. She just believes that something has happened and may not even be able to articulate it because she got so drunk the night before that she doesn't remember it and blacked out. So those situations do need to be tested. They do need to be tested because if they can determine that, hey, there is no evidence of a rape, or they can determine that, hey, it wasn't the guy that you've accused, or yes, it is the guy that you've accused. In those situations, those kits absolutely do need to be tested because they are evidence in a case, and they can help to solve a case where there's a question as to what actually did happen versus what the woman is saying.
This is why I agree that we need more people. We need, if there's a shortage of people who can actually test these kits, and there are kits that should be tested that aren't being tested, but not every rape kit is sitting untested because there isn't the staff, right? Some rape kits don't get tested because the guy who's been accused admitted that he had sex with her. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes it happens that the rape kit doesn't get tested because there's some kind of CCTV footage, or there's some kind of evidence that the guy who she's accusing, right, was somewhere else, right? Crystal Gayle Mangum had a rape kit done.
Well, that simply would have helped to prove that it wasn't him then.
Exactly. It did help to prove that it wasn't him. But this is not a matter of, these rape victims are being, they don't have justice available to them. Crystal Gayle Mangum
got a rape kit done in order to stay out of the fucking mental ward on an involuntary commitment, right? That's why she did that, right? That's why she made
my statement that feminists will claim that women are not getting justice is not endorsement of the feminist claim, just for the record.
No, I know, and I know that there may be cases where the testing of a rape kit is absolutely vital for a woman who is an actual victim to get justice, or for a man who's been wrongly accused to be exonerated. I absolutely 100% agree with you, but I don't believe that every single case of a rape kit going untested is just because the system doesn't give a shit. I don't think so. Or that the system doesn't have the resources. I don't think so. I think there are plenty of cases where someone has been accused specifically by name, right? The woman went and got a rape kit because she wants to be able to prove that he had sex with her on that given night, right? In a court of law. And, you know, but she has to be able to prove that it was non-consensual. And if the police don't think that the case, as she describes it, is something that they can prove, even with him admitting that, yes, I had sex with her, right? They're not going to go to the trouble of proving that he was being honest when he confessed that he had sex with her. They're not going to go to the time, the trouble, and the expense of doing that, right? So some of these rape kits are just essentially, he swore up and down he had sex with her. We'd better prove he had sex with her.
Well, once again, more often than not, those cases don't involve a rape kit because they are not brought the next day. They're not, the girl doesn't show up at the police station until much later. A lot of times when it's sex that one side is claiming was consensual and the other side is claiming was not consensual, the girl, especially when it was consensual, the girl doesn't. It takes her a while to decide later that it wasn't. It's not a common thing for the next morning or for right after the incident, right after he leaves or whatever, for a girl to decide, no, I changed my mind, this wasn't consensual, and I'm going to go to the cops right now. I'm going to go to the hospital right now. She goes through a process, and quite often it involves her friends trying to convince her.
Unless it's like the Hofstra accuser, and she's trying to, she meets up with her boyfriend after going missing for hours, and she's all disheveled and carrying her shoes, and she looks like she's just
make up a story.
From Sunday, and she tells him she's been raped, and he talks her into reporting, and she goes and she gets a rape kit right away. I mean, like, these kinds of things also happen. The alibi thing, I mean, we're talking about the false rape accusation that comes from, like, a woman scorned, a woman feeling rejected, a woman feeling violated, a woman feeling like she didn't get what she wanted out of the deal, right?
Well, it's a very simple thing then.
Those are the ones.
Her penalty, part of her penalty for filing a false accusation, if it's proved false, is that she should have to pay for the kit.
Well, yes.
Very simple, you know.
But
I mean, this is a situation where we don't want to start picking and choosing and actually denying getting these things done because there are girls who are lying.
I don't want situations where a given man, and the Hofstra defendants admitted they had sex with her. They totally did. There's no reason to test that rape kit. They admitted they had sex with her.
Fine, then there should be a stipulation in the law that says that there has to be a condition like that before they can ignore the kit. There has to be a condition where the man has admitted, and it has to be in writing. Very simple. If it's not, but they don't have that right now. That's part of the problem.
And so all of the rape kits that don't get tested get lumped into this whole, the system hates accusers, the system hates complainants, the system hates victims, and doesn't care about testing the kits, when in reality, we have no idea how many kits are like the Hofstra accuser's rape kit, how many kits are like Crystal Mangum's rape kit.
The Crystal Mangum situation actually doesn't necessarily eliminate the need for a test. And there's a reason for that. Because there are detectives, there are agents, not agencies, police departments, and there are prosecutors who will still bring a case against a man if it can be proved that he was not capable of being present at the original time and place that the woman made the accusation if she changes her story. And
Yeah.
I've seen cases like that. A changed story with a change of date and time, or a change of location, a change of detail, just to get around a guy's alibi, does not eliminate the investigation and the potential of a brought case, of a tried case. So that situation, you still want to do the kit, simply because if he's saying, no, I didn't rape her, we didn't have sex, I wasn't involved with her, I never laid a hand on her, that kit needs to be tested so that they can prove whether or not there's evidence of him touching her, evidence of him being sexually involved with her, because there would be. And if there's not, he has a right to that evidence.
Okay. We got to move on to the next story. Do we want to, since we're getting close to the end here, maybe we'll just go, because there's like two other little stories, but since we're getting close to the end, I think, Anna, you wanted to tell like a personal story about it? Or was that, or did you not?
That's what I understood, rather, that was kind of part of the premise.
That's okay, actually. I mean, we have a couple of other examples, and there's like other things you can go into. Like you can look at false rape accusations in the military, which are also actually higher than average. And the thing with the we already got into the rape kits thing, and it's actually like all this stuff is stuff that feminists point to and say this is proof of rape culture. When they talk about the rape kits, the untested, which is numbers between the thousands, the 10,000s, and the 100,000s. But I don't really know what the number is because there's so much conflicting information.
Well,
so,
to throw a monkey wrench into the whole thing, I really wish I could find the study so that I have the facts backing me up for like 100,000%. But there was a study that we were looking at close to 10 years ago that showed they had about 300 rape kits, or rather, it was a study that measured female like blood and like whatever levels post them saying that they've been raped and that they've been drugged. So this study had to actually be paused because they could not find a single instance of a date rape drug in any of these females' systems. So that's, I mean, if anything, if anyone's watched my most recent Tropes versus Men video on the definitions of what rape culture is, it really goes into how the system is very strongly skewed against men who are accused of rape, and it amplifies women, or people, women, mainly only women, who say that they were raped. Things such as like looking at someone is like stare rape practically at this point. And we have the consent, enthusiastic consent laws, and this new story that I ran across where they're considering making it basically legal for any legal for any woman to say that she was raped if she had even a drop of alcohol in her system. So all these ways in which consensual sex between men and women is being criminalized and only men are being punished, that to me is a rape culture of a different kind. We have quite an obsession with this notion of female victimhood and rape panics on campus and things like that, which have been over and over proven to be false. And I don't know how many false stories we need for people to open their eyes. And I'm kind of happy that the Rolling Stone situation and all the other ones like that are happening. It's unfortunate that people are getting publicly embarrassed like that, but I think it's about time that we see how victimhood narrative is used against people and to subjugate and to oppress people. And most often, 99.99%, it's men. This is not used against women. It's only used against men. That, to me, is rape culture. Of course, and we're ignoring the fact that a lot of teenage boys are also predated upon by older women, but let's just forget all that.
And we're also like, in a situation where people are trying to put men in prison unjustly, where they're going to probably get raped.
Yes, I know.
Okay, so sorry, Cherry, you can go ahead and give us your testimony.
All right, no, I kind of prepared that, or rather, I don't need to prepare it because that was kind of a big-ish part of my college, or not college, right before college, so high school life. So I didn't need to wait until the Rolling Stones and the Matches Girl and all these, even the Duke Lacrosse and all these other things that turned out to be false allegations. I sort of lived one while I was in 10th grade, 11th grade and 12th grade. So I moved to Arkansas from, don't ask, from Southern California, and I spent 2 years in high school in California, and then I spent 2 years in high school in the middle of a tiny town in Arkansas. And there was a boy there who's actually also from California, oddly enough, but he's been there for a lot longer than I have, kind of trailer park living, as pretty much most people were, except for like the rich pastor's kids or whoever. And the football cheerleading people that, of course, dated each other. Very cliche, tiny school. So anyway, and I was I really liked this drummer kid from the band, and I was like checking him out, and then we started talking, and I was approached one day by someone who had like the what do they call it? The Dukes of Hazzard, like really wild, like wild-eyed Southern boy. Anyway, he approached me and he was like, the person you're hanging out with, he's like a rapist. I'm like, whoa, what is all this? So I was warned that apparently the kid that I was hanging out with, he's a rapist. And how that went is big, long drama high school story, but basically, and we ended up actually dating, so for like a year after that, because I was already interested, and that was not going to deter me since I, kind of trusted him as a person. I knew him as a person. I was like, hey, what happened? And he told me, and then all the women confirmed it. So what happened was, he had a girlfriend of like 3 years and then cheated on her with someone else, and then that other girl was part of their drama band geeks people, while the girlfriend was like a popular kid. Who cares? But because this girl that was in drama, they were also religious. I mean, not in drama, in band. There we go, band geeks. Yeah. There was like a family of band kids, and they were all like together, and they were in it together, like the football kids, but like a community, a family of geeks and nerds, and it was great. And this girl that he cheated with was from that little family, but also a lot of people were religious because it was like the South. And something happened to where people wanted to cause tension, and they said that these kids are doing something that they shouldn't be doing. And cops showed up to this girl's door, and her grandma was like there in the earshot, and they were asking about her relationship with this kid. And the girl goes, "Oh yeah, he raped me." So even though it was completely consensual, and she was basically cheating, or rather helping a guy cheat on long-term girlfriend, but then when called on it around her relatives, her grandma was religious, she was like, "Oh, I was raped." And of course the news spread throughout the whole band family. He was completely ostracized. Everybody thought that he was horrible and talked shit about him, so it was like the entire school's worth of ostracization and bullshit. And then I've talked to the girl, I got to know her, and she was, because she was a Renaissance fair geek, like we had a lot in common. And I ended up talking to her, and she was like, yeah, and I ended up being friends with her boyfriend who she was cheating on at the same time. It's so fucking high school drama. Oh god, reliving this is horrible. But I ended up knowing these people, and they're like, yeah, no, it's a fact, like I lied, and I feel really bad, and blah blah blah. So I have it from her own mouth, like on Facebook somewhere in the archives, that she was like, yes, I faked a rape accusation. And so not only did I get approached, so like his potential romantic interests were being cock-blocked very actively by white knights, but the fact that he did not have a community that he previously had in this basically foreign place, since he didn't grow up there. And I just firsthand witnessed the avalanche that the social ostracization and social like the reputation thing around rape and rapism, rapists goes, and how bullshit it all is. So that kind of like stuck with me as yet another example throughout my life of things that were not as people say they are, very much in terms of like rape culture on campuses and all these terrible girls that are raped by all these evil men, and all of that is just kind of, yeah, not at all what happened. But that was the story, what was told, so yeah.
Wow.
That had to be a horrible situation for him in every way that it would be for an adult man, but also in the sense that at one of the most confusing and stressful times in a person's life, he was essentially without a support network of people his own age. Because I mean, adolescence is like God's nasty joke on humanity. Everything in your system, your brain, your body, everything sort of turns on you, and it's like it's determined to drive you crazy. And
You're all
without,
you're getting
one of the
embarrassing here.
right, and here we have this guy who's going through everything that every other teenager goes through, all of the humiliating moments that guys go through that girls that age don't understand, like erections at the front of the classroom and things like that, and he has no close support network, and people wonder why the group that commits suicide the most is men. It's things like this. It's things like false accusations being used to take their children away. It's being the sex that can be targeted with something as weighty and as life-altering as this on the whim of a person who doesn't want to get a lecture from grandma. His whole adolescence can be wrecked because she doesn't want to get a lecture from grandma. And I would bet that there would be people out there going, oh, you don't want to say stuff like that to the girl. You don't want to make her feel bad. Fuck yeah, I want to make her feel bad. Look what she did.
Well, no, what they end up saying is that I don't want any actual victims, potential victims, to stay quiet about what happened to them because they're seeing us being critical about these people who lied. And so that'll keep them in the shadows, keep them from coming out. And that's what people that are like on the moderate mid-fence between feminism and MRNs, where they're like deciding not to be feminist, but they're not quite MRAs, they still have this element of, oh, I don't want to scare away any potential victims by talking about false rape accusations and how these girls weren't believed, so I'm going to stay quiet about that. And there's a way to go around that, because that's unfortunate.
It certainly takes social justice-y type thinking to associate actual sexual violence victims with liars, as if the two are really related, and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between one and the other. And those who have actually been through an experience and actually have evidence of their experience should, in any way, shape, or form, think that by reporting they would be shuffled off into the same category as people who come in with no evidence because what they're claiming didn't happen. The same thing could be said of any crime at all, where there can or should be evidence of the crime if it happened. A burglary, and any other type of an assault, vandalism. All of these are things. There are people that make claims, oh, this happened, somebody broke into my house and took my jewelry, when it's really hiding in a
fake Judge Judy doesn't
they're
mean
faking out the insurance company. There are false accusations, there are false claims of other crimes too.
Right, basically you're saying just because there's Judge Judy of completely false accusations of people against each other doesn't mean that people don't actually get robbed, and that
it's not that. You can tell the difference. You can tell when somebody's had their house broken into. You can tell when there's evidence of forced entry. You can tell when somebody's been beaten up. You can tell when these things have happened. And for people to try to convince victims to actually put on actual victims that they should take responsibility for this, that they should be the scapegoats for this effort to protect liars is actually almost as shameful as being one of the liars in the first place. I mean, for feminists and social justice types to bend over backwards so far to protect the ability to get away with lying about something like this, you almost have to wonder if they believe most rape accusations are false and they simply want to protect the ability to make those false accusations and exploit them. But yeah, I do. Brian, you've asked in the chat if I also have a testimony about this. I'm going to talk about the one from the 7 years in hell case that I had written about before. Because this is probably the most blatant incident that I know of that I'm free to talk about. There's also a time in my history, and I can't really go into detail, but I had a group of friends try to convince me to accuse a date of mine, not a boyfriend, and not just a friend, but somebody I was really close to and dated. And there was a drama that was a lot like a high school drama, except it happened in college. But I don't want to go deeply into that because I don't want it to come back on the person. There are still people who have who believe that that was a non-consensual incident, and it wasn't. Anyway, the one that I want to talk about, I'll briefly go over this case because I know not everybody listening has heard me talk about it. I had a friend who went through about 7 years of false accusations and being jerked around in both the civil and criminal court systems by his ex-wife. He got protective custody of their daughter after her second husband abused the child. And we're talking abuse that left bruises. There are photographs of the bruises that were used to help get the custody changed over. After he got custody, she started making false accusations. And it started with smaller accusations. It started with things like, oh, you know, they practice occult religions in their households. Get the child out of that household, which, you know, it's not actually illegal to be a Satanist, but he's not a Satanist. It's not actually illegal to be a witch. It's not illegal to be something other than the mainstream religions. But it can be used to manipulate the court system even now if you're a practitioner of a religion that is not locally accepted. So that was the first one. Then she went on with accusations of stalking. She had made accusations of physical assault, but the scariest accusation she made was rape. She offered absolutely no evidence at all to back up the accusation. There was no witness. There was, of course, no medical evidence because he didn't do it. It was alleged to have happened on a particular day and time recent to the time that she was making the accusation. And of course, she didn't have a rape kit. She didn't go to the hospital because it would have proved her wrong. There wouldn't have been any evidence. The accusation was pursued by a female police detective from the city of Dayton, not from like the outlying areas, even though both of them were from suburbs that were not Dayton proper. But she went to Dayton proper for this one. Now, Dayton doesn't have like, you know, bigger New York City crime rate or the Chicago crime rate or anything like that, or Cleveland, but we have murders, we have rapes, we have actual violent crime here that they got to pay attention to. That they have things to do. It's you know, definitely a waste of police resources to go in and make a false accusation like this. And of course, because we do have a crime rate like that here, they should be familiar with victim behavior and savvy enough to be suspicious. When, you know, in the course of the investigation, the victim can't keep her story straight. So my friend proved his alibi. He actually had physical evidence that he was elsewhere doing something other than, you know, raping the ex at the time that she made the accusation, that she said it had happened, and on that day. And so she said she'd given the wrong date. Oh, I got the day wrong. Well, that was debunked. He had evidence of where he was on her second story. He had evidence to prove her wrong then too. So she changed it again along with the time. And when that didn't work, she changed it again. And this detective, this female detective, continued to pursue the case even after the accuser changed the day, changed the time, changed details of what was supposed to have happened. You know, she couldn't keep her story straight to the point where it became an entirely different story. Each time she revised her story, he was dragged into the police office. Now, they don't arrest you. They come to your door and they say they're going to take you in for questioning. You can't just not go, but you're not under arrest. So they don't have to read you your Miranda rights, and they don't have to treat you like you're under arrest. But they can lock you up, and they can make you pay bail to get out. So they can take your money, they take your medications and everything. You had asthma, he's diabetic. This is not somebody who's, you know, the most dangerous sounding man locally. And you know, they took all that stuff. They had to take it in because if you're in the jail for an extended period of time and you have a medication that you have to take, say, every time you eat or every 8 hours or every 4 hours or something, you have to have it available to you, but you can't have it on your person because you're in jail. So they take that stuff. And at one point during this ordeal, they lost expensive medications belonging to him. And then claimed never to have been given those medications, and they hadn't documented that they received them or anything. They just, you know, lost something like $150 worth of medications belonging to a man who was low income. So at one point he was questioned on this accusation. At one point he was questioned for 12 hours straight without food or water or access to his medications. And that was the time that they misplaced them, and there was, of course, he never got a receipt. He never got, you know, anything back from them on that. He ended up having to go to the emergency room following that visit, which really hit his family in the budget, and they ended up having to go to extended family for help. And all of us that knew this family, all of us that were around this family, this was kind of, we'd already had the wake-up call that, you know, he can't just not have a witness at any time of the day. We were already kind of monitoring him to make sure that if she made an accusation, there was somebody who was credible to go into court and answer for what he was doing and where he was at any given time of day, so that she couldn't hit him with a lie. But this was like, this just really took the case, because we were trying to figure out, you know, we understood that the police had an attitude of listen and believe just for an accusation. But when it came to this situation, we're trying to figure out, all right, so she's changed her story. She's changed her story like 3 times. Did she keep some of your hair? You know, did she maybe steal a condom that had sperm in it and freeze it or something that she gave them? What could she possibly have that would have a detective who would know better continuing to pursue this case until an attorney actually had to threaten legal action against the police department for harassment? She had the Violence Against Women Act. She had the training that detective is given because it's written into federal law. She had legally mandated listen and believe. And that was really all it was. It wasn't the detective's personal attitude. It wasn't, you know, this woman hates men and just wants to take them all down. It was feminist, lobbied, legal requirements for what police detectives are trained to do. And it literally took, you know, moving mountains worth of evidence to put a stop to that.
Wow. All right. Well,
with that happy bedtime story, I know I'll sleep better tonight.
Let me. Can I throw a couple things?
Yeah,
in?
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay, real quick for people who are listening. Tell us what you think about these stories in the comments, and let us know if there's any particular parts of this that you liked, that you think you know, are something that would go in like a best of compilation or something, like a choice bit from the video. And let us know what you think. Do you think that the problems with this lie with the way that the state handles it, with the way that feminists spin it, with the way that the media, deals with these false rape allegations, the way academia talks about it. Whatever you think, please leave us a comment. And it's probably a combination of things, but I'd like to see what you guys what your thoughts are. So please leave us a comment about that. All right, Alison.
And also tell us how you think it went with putting together the Rantzerker and the radio show.
Yeah, we did a Grindhouse episode today. It was a double feature.
Indeed. And if you like that format, or if we should keep them separate at all times, not cross the streams, because.
Oh, I get there's like 2 streams, and then we. Oh, yeah.
Yes. And because the fabric of space and time just can't handle so much awesomeness at the intersection of the 2 streams of the Badgers, as it were. So just give us just drop in a message. Tell us what you think. And, if you're not currently a patron, you can also tell us why you're not spending money on us. Because we're the most awesome thing on YouTube. And I know that for a fact.
I'm
have
inclined to agree.
Yes,
I have to suggest.
That's good. Someone agrees with me. But
Allison,
yeah, so
Allison,
if you are interested in making sure that Honey Badger Radio continues its effervescentness. Is that a word?
Allison, I'm going to
maybe.
need
Anyway, if you want us to continue to come this far with us, so come a little further, www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. Every little bit helps to ensure total badger saturation in the greater world. And effervescence. Badgervescence. Okay, this is just...
All right. I think Karen's been... No, Karen's trying to get in. Karen.
Are you trying to say something?
Yada.
Or are you just making me a sandwich?
You said something about how we are the most...
If Karen has something to say, she's really reticent about it.
Can you guys...
it's like she's not
No, we can hear her. Alison's being mean.
Alison's just being...
No, I can't hear Karen! What the hell are you talking about?
Oh, I can hear her.
You can hear her.
Muted.
Well, nobody else can. Okay,
I can hear Karen too. She's speaking.
I am not muted.
Oh my God! So Karen,
Allison, shut up.
Wait,
Brian, tell Allison.
Are you sure
Allison,
you guys can hear
Allison.
Karen? Because my screen says she's muted.
Yeah,
it does,
so
but I can hear her.
I am. Okay.
Well,
Brian?
okay, so
Brian?
she can.
Karen, Allison, wait.
Tell
Karen's
everybody
gonna talk.
to shut up.
Okay, go ahead, Karen.
Okay, Allison,
Karen,
I'm gonna need to hear some data.
I can't hear a damn thing.
All right, shut up, Allison.
Nobody is
my
speaking
God.
at this moment.
Oh my fucking God! I'm gonna fucking kill you. I am
think you
going
guys are
to
bullshitting
fucking.
us.
I'm gonna kill my dog, and then I'm gonna kill you. Okay. Now, I'm gonna need some data proving that we are the most awesome thing on the internet. I'm gonna need to see some actual numbers, some statistics, with appropriate methodology, a good sample size, and all of the rest, because badgervescence, I can acknowledge that it's a thing, but I just can't get behind the idea that it's the most awesome thing on the internet. Not yet.
Okay.
Awesome.
Or you can talk to one cop one time, and if he says, "Yeah, I think that they are," then it's true. You can do it one of 2 ways: rigorously or lazily. I think we prefer the rigorous, though. All right, Karen is done talking, Allison. You can now talk.
And I did hear her, but I had to hear her in a circumvented route through the actual YouTube stream. And you know why we are the most badgervescent? Because of our listeners. And, well, yes, because you guys stick with us despite the fact that we rub everything the wrong way, apparently. I keep getting letters from conservatives and Christians who say that you're mean to us, and then I get letters from people who identify as liberals and left-leaning, and they also say that we're mean to them, or that we're right-leaning. And we get called alt-right, and we get called regressive left, and we get called Islam apologists, and we get called Islamophobic. So I don't know. It's like we're at the very intersection of offending every fucking person on the internet, and I think that makes us awesome. And you must too, because you're still listening to us. So there you go.
They are still here.
Yeah.
That says a lot. Thank you guys. Shall I?
Thank you for riding the bucking badger bronco.
Yes, the baloney bronco.
Yeah. Well, wait. I wasn't going there.
The baloney pony.
Just fucking end it, man.
All right.
It's like